It was one of those shifts where the air in the dispatch room felt heavier than usual. Not warm, not cold, just heavy, like the kind of air you get right before a thunderstorm, charged but waiting. I've been staring at the empty call board for almost 20 minutes. No ringing lines, no new incidents, just the faint hum of the computer monitors and the tick of the clock above the doorway. It was 2:14 a.m. when the phone lit up. Line 3. I put on my headset and answered the same way I always do. 911, what's your emergency? There was no answer at first, just breathing. Not the shallow, panic kind. Not the kind you hear when someone's running. This was slow, measured, almost controlled. Hello. I tried again. This is 911. Can you speak? A whisper came through, so faint I had to lean closer to the mic. He's in my walls. The voice was male, mid-30s maybe, trembling, but not crying. What's your name, sir? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Daniel. The word caught in his throat, like he'd been holding it there too long. Okay, Daniel, can you tell me your address? He gave it. A residential street I didn't recognize right away, but I typed it in. The mapping software zoomed in on a small neighborhood near the edge of town. What's happening right now? I asked. Silence for a moment. Then, he's breathing. I almost said, who's breathing? But then, I heard it. It wasn't coming from the phone. At least, not only from the phone. It was faint, buried under the line static, a steady inhale, exhale, inhale. Not close to the receiver, but close enough to be picked up. Is this person inside your home? I asked. A pause. He's inside the walls. The way he said it, not I think, or it sounds like. No, he was sure. I adjusted my headset and signaled to my partner, Denise, to start dispatching a unit. She slid her chair over, typing quickly without asking questions. Daniel, how do you know someone's in the walls? I asked, my voice low. Because I can hear him moving when I move. And the breathing, always the breathing. The static shifted slightly. For a second, I thought the call was breaking up. Then I realized the breathing had gotten louder. It was strange. It didn't sound like it was coming through the phone anymore. It sounded closer, more in my ears than in the headset. Daniel, are you in a safe room? Somewhere you can lock the door? I asked. Yes. His whisper cracked. I'm in my bedroom, but the wall behind the headboard, it's hollow. I was jotting notes while Denise got the officers en route. 2 units, ETA 6 minutes. Can you tell me if you live in a house or an apartment? House. Old one. My parents' place. They passed a few years ago. I just moved back in. All right. Do you live alone? Another pause. I thought so. I didn't like the way he said it. The breathing through the line shifted again. It wasn't steady anymore. It was reacting, matching the rhythm of my breathing now. I sat up straighter, took the headset off for a second, listened to the room. Nothing. Put it back on, breathing still there. Daniel, the police are on their way. Stay on the line with me. I want you to stay as quiet as possible. He didn't answer. Daniel. I heard movement. Not frantic movement, more like someone trying to stand up quietly in a dark room. Then, I can see the drywall moving. I type a note for the officers. Possible break-in. Suspect inside wall cavity. What do you mean moving? I asked. It's pushing in, like someone's leaning their face right up against it. I can hear him sniffing. A sound came through, so faint I thought it might be my imagination. A single, long inhale. Wet almost, like someone smelling something they weren't supposed to. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed steady. Daniel, can you leave the room? No, he whispered. If I move, he moves. The sound on the line shifted again. Not the breathing this time. Something else, like nails dragging very slowly across wood. Where exactly is this wall? Behind my bed, but there's no room back there. It's the outside wall of the house. I glanced at the map again. The property outline showed his bedroom was at the rear corner of the home. He was right. There shouldn't be any crawl space or attic access there. But the breathing, it was louder now. And then I realized something that made my stomach drop. It wasn't louder because the person in his wall was moving closer. It was louder because I was. I hadn't moved, but the sound in the headset was creeping up in volume, like the breather was pressing their mouth against the mic on my end. Daniel, I said slowly, are you still in your bedroom? Yes. Is there any way you can leave the house without going near that wall? No. The hallway's right outside the door. The wall runs along it. He'd hear me. I heard a faint chuckle. Not from Daniel. Not for anyone I recognized. It was low, like someone letting out a breath in amusement. Did you just hear that? I asked. Daniel's whisper came quick. He's laughing. The chuckle happened again, this time followed by a shift, the sound of something sliding inside a tight space. I could feel goosebumps creeping in my arms. Daniel, the officers are almost there. I need you to stay on the line until you hear them. I won't make it that long, he said. He's coming through. A creak, then another. The breathing hit the mic again, close and wet. And for the first time, it spoke. Not words, exactly, just a hiss of air shaped into something like my name. The call log showed 4 minutes had passed since it came in, but it felt like hours. Denise looked over at me, her eyes wide. Units just got there. Daniel, the police are outside. Can you go to them? Silence. Daniel. I thought I heard movement, footsteps, then a sudden, sharp crash like with splintering. A grunt. Then the line went dead. We called it in as a possible assault in progress. But when the officers checked the house, they didn't find anyone. Not Daniel. Not anyone in the walls. The only thing they reported was a hole behind the headboard, a clean cut into the drywall, maybe a foot wide. And the strange part? Behind it wasn't the outside of the house. It was another wall. No cavity. No space. Just wall. When they knocked on it, it sounded solid. I played the call back later, trying to hear if maybe I'd imagine the breathing. But the strangest thing was, in the recording, the breathing was gone. All you could hear was me, talking to myself that I didn't hear from Daniel again for 3 days. I figured maybe the officers had found him later, maybe he'd gone to stay somewhere else. Maybe it was just one of those weird calls that never gets explained. Dispatch is full of them, but that doesn't mean I stopped thinking about it. I kept replaying that breathing in my head, the way it didn't sound like it was coming from him or from anywhere normal, the way it seemed to get closer to me, like it was pressing in through the line itself. By the third night, the memory had started to fade just enough that I could convince myself it was a trick of fatigue. Then my line lit up again. Same name, same address. I answered. 911, what's your? She's right above me. It was Daniel. No introduction, no pause. His voice was trembling like he'd been holding the phone against his ear for hours, waiting for me to pick up. I didn't waste time. Daniel, is this the same situation as before? Yes, he whispered. Only now she's crawling. The pronoun caught me. She. Yes. I can hear the hair dragging against the boards. Fingernails scraping. She's moving in circles right above my bed. I looked at the address on my monitor again, the floor plan in my head. Daniel, there's no attic space above that room. That's the roof. He didn't respond right away. All I could hear was a shallow breathing and the faintest scratching sound through the line. I know, he finally said. That's what scares me. I motioned to Denise again. She glanced at my screen, eyes narrowing, then started dispatching units without me even asking. Are you in the same bedroom as before? I asked. Yes. Can you leave it? No. If I move, she'll stop. And I need to know where she is. There is something so strange about the way he said it. Like he wasn't just afraid of her catching him. Like he was afraid of not hearing her. The sound on the line shifted, a faint scuffle and a low, dragging noise, almost like fabric against wood. Then I heard it. It wasn't loud, but it was clear, a slow, rhythmic thump, not a heavy footstep, more like the pressure of a palm hitting wood every few seconds. Thump, drag, thump, drag. She's making a circle, Daniel whispered. Every time she passes over me, she slows down, like she's listening. My skin prickled. Daniel, you said there's no space up there. How do you know it's a she? There was a pause. Then he said, because she's humming. I thought maybe I'd misheard him until I heard it too. It was faint, buried in static, but it was there, a low, tuneless hum. A woman's voice, deep in her throat, like someone humming to themselves while they worked. Except there was no attic, no place for her to be. I tried to keep my voice steady. Daniel, officers are about 4 minutes away. I need you to. She stopped. The hum cut off. The thump stopped. The line went still. Daniel? She's on her knees now, he whispered, right over my head. Not moving. I think she's listening to you. Something about the way he said it made me suddenly aware of my own voice, how loud it must sound in that silent room. Then I heard another sound, not from his end, from mine, a faint creak above the dispatch ceiling, just once quick like someone shifting their weight. I told myself it was nothing, just the old building. Daniel, do you have anything you can defend yourself with? I have a lamp, he said. Okay, keep it with you. Don't. She's turning her head. His voice cracked. I can hear the hair sliding against the floorboards. The line filled with a faint, dry sound, like strands of something being pulled slowly across wood. Then came a breath. Not rushed, not deep, just one slow inhale and an even slower exhale. It was so close, I could almost feel it through the line. She's looking down, Daniel whispered, like she can see through the ceiling. I opened my mouth to say something, but then a thought hit me like ice water. If there's no attic, no crawl space, nothing up there, what is she on? Before I could ask, Daniel said, she's moving again. The thumps came back, quicker now, circling faster. The humming started again, but this time it had a kind of urgency to it, rising and falling in a way that made my chest feel tight. She's over by the door now, he said. Daniel, if she's not above you anymore, I want you to move. Go to the front door. Officers should be pulling up any second. No, he said quickly. If I leave, she'll know I'm trying to get out. She's pushing on something. I heard a faint knock through the phone. 3 in a row. She's knocking on the ceiling from above the hallway, Daniel said. Like she want me to follow. My gut tightened. Do not follow her. Stay put. The humming stopped. Silence. Then, so faint I almost missed it, I heard a voice through the line, not Daniel's and not mine. It was a woman's voice, breathy and low, saying, "Come up." The words were wrong somehow. Not like she was inviting him. More like she was already there and confused about why he wasn't. "Daniel," I said, my own voice shaking now. "Officers are outside. Do you hear them?" A pause. "I hear something. Lights, sirens, knocking." "No," he whispered. "I hear scratching. In the wall now." The sound grew louder in the background, nails dragging down drywall. "She's coming down," he said. Before I could respond, the line erupted with a sharp crack, like with splintering. Daniel yelled, not in pain, but in pure shock, and then the call dropped. I ripped off my headset and looked at Denise. She was already on the radio, demanding a status update from the units on scene. One of them came back almost instantly. "Dispatch, we're here. No one's answering the door. No sign of forced entry." "Try the back," I said. They did. Still nothing. Then, a few minutes later, the officer came back on, his voice tight. "We're in. House is empty. Bedroom looks undisturbed except for the headboard pulled away from the wall. No sign of the caller. Check above the ceiling." I told them, even though I knew there wasn't supposed to be anything there. They did. The officer came back on, his voice lower now. "Dispatch, there's no space above this room. It's solid wood up to the roofline. But there's something strange." I waited. It's the ceiling boards. They're bowed, like something heavy's been crawling on them. When the call ended and the line went quiet, I just sat there, staring at the empty screen. I kept thinking about that voice. Those 2 words. "Come up." And the thing that won't leave my head is, if there was no space above him, and she was crawling up there anyway, where'd he have gone if he'd listened? I barely slept after the night Daniel disappeared. Every sound in my apartment seemed sharper. Every creak in the ceiling felt like it lasted a second too long. And every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice again, low, breathy, wrong. "Come up." By the time I clocked in for my next overnight shift, I convinced myself it was over. He was gone. The address was cleared. I could file it away in the mental drawer where all the unsolved, unfinished calls go. But around 1:30 a.m., the line lit up. The number was blocked. The location data started loading on the map, and my stomach tightened. It was Daniel's voice. I keyed my mic to the responding unit. "Do you have visual on the caller?" "Negative." They said the field was empty. No sign of footprints, no movement, nothing. I stared at my screen. Daniel's pin was still there, less than 20 feet from their car. "Try honking your horn," I told them. They did. Daniel's voice came through instantly. I heard that. "It's behind me." I looked at the map again. The patrol car was directly north of his pin. "Face the sound, Daniel." Do you see headlights? A long pause. No, he whispered. It's dark. It's always been dark. I told the officers to walk toward his pin. As they moved, I watched the icons close the gap. They were within 5 feet of his location when his breathing spiked on the line. She's grabbing me. I heard scrambling, muffled grunts, the sound of grass tearing underfoot. Daniel? Daniel! She's pulling me down, his voice cut out, swallowed by static so harsh it made me pull the headset away. When it cleared, all I could hear was the wind again. The officer said they'd reached the exact coordinates and found nothing. No man, no footprints, no sign the grass had been disturbed. They walked the entire field. Empty. Don't send them to the house, he whispered. I froze, pen in hand. Daniel? Where are you? Not at the house, he said. His voice was thinner this time, like he'd been walking for hours and had nothing left in him. She's not there anymore. I typed as I spoke. Okay, where are you right now? I don't know. It's open. Wind's cold. Feels like a field. On my map, the pin dropped in real time. Not on the neighborhood street from before, but in the middle of an unmarked green stretch about 8 miles outside of town. No buildings. No roads. Just nothing. Daniel, how did you get there? I woke up here, he said. I think she brought me. The way he said she made my neck tighten. Are you injured? No. He paused, and his breath quickened. I think she's here, though. I waved Denise over without looking away from the screen. She came up behind me, glanced at the GPS pin, and frowned. There's nothing there, she mouthed. I keyed the radio and sent 2 units toward the coordinates. ETA about 12 minutes. Daniel, I've got help on the way. I need you to tell me exactly what you see around you. He went quiet for a few seconds. All I could hear was the faint hiss of wind. It's flat, he said finally. There's frost on the grass. I can see my breath. And there's something under me. What do you mean? Ground soft, like there's something hollow underneath. I jotted the note down. Denise was already on another line, alerting the county deputy in case we needed backup. Daniel, I need you to stay on the phone until they get to you. Can you tell me if there's any light? A road? A landmark? He started to answer, but stopped. What is it? I asked. I hear her. My mouth went dry. Where? His voice was almost too low to catch. Below me. I pressed the headset tighter. I didn't hear humming this time. I didn't even hear breathing. What I heard was tapping. A slow, deliberate rhythm coming up from under him. She's under the ground, he whispered. I told myself it could be anything, water pipes, a small animal, even just a shifting of soil in the cold. But the sound was too regular, too precise. She's moving, he said. It's like she knows I'm here. The GPS map updated. The pin shifted just a little, like he'd taken 2 steps to the side. But Daniel swore he hadn't moved. The tapping followed him anyway. Daniel, are you safe to move toward the road? I asked. I don't see a road. His voice cracked. I don't see anything. It's all the same. Every direction. The map didn't show any terrain changes either. Just that unbroken green field, as flat as paper. The units checked and over the radio. They were less than 3 minutes out. I told Daniel, okay, I need you to hold on just a little longer. Can you wave your arms when you see headlights? Silence. Daniel. She stopped, he said. The tapping stopped. The wind hissed over the line again, but I swear I could hear another sound buried under it. The faint rustle of fabric, like someone shifting their weight. Then came a new sound, so soft I almost missed it. The hum. Quieter than before, almost thoughtful. Daniel, the officers are almost. Wait, he cut in. Do you hear that? I did, but I didn't tell him that. It's coming from under me, he said. But it's closer now. His voice dropped to a whisper so faint I had to strain to hear it. I think she's going to come up. The GPS pin jumped again. Not by much, maybe a few feet, but it was enough to make Denise and I exchange a look. She's right under me, he breathed. If I move, she moves. If I stop, she stops. I told him to hold still. The last thing I wanted was for him to fall into some kind of sinkhole. The officers checked in again. They said they were at the coordinates. I scanned the map. Their car icon was parked right next to his pin. They're there, Daniel. You should be able to see them. I don't, he said. And then, just as they were about to give up, the GPS pin on my screen flickered. For half a second, It showed a new location, the address from the first night. Daniel's house. Then it disappeared entirely. The call log recorded the line as still connected for another 2 minutes, but there was no sound after that. Not even static. Just dead silence. When I finally disconnected, the screen went back to its usual idle glow, as if nothing had happened at all. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty map. Because if the officers were standing in the right spot, and the GPS was right, and Daniel was right there the whole time, then either they were blind, or he wasn't above ground anymore. And the way his voice had sounded at the end, the way it was getting pulled away, I keep thinking about what he said the first night. He's on my walls. Maybe she has walls too. Just not the kind you can see that I didn't want to come back to work that night. It's not that I was scared, not exactly. It's that the shift had the kind of weight you can feel before it even starts. Like the air is heavier in your lungs. Like the building knows something you don't. For days after the field call, everyone had been walking on eggshells. Nobody said much about it out loud, but I could tell it stayed in the back of their minds. I'd catch dispatchers staring off between calls, their eyes unfocused, like they were replaying the details. The address that wasn't an address. The voice that kept pleading, describing a place that didn't exist. The field where there should have been a house. That night, the rain had started before my shift, the kind that soaks everything in seconds and makes the night feel muted. Streetlights blur in it. Headlights scatter. The city feels smaller when it rains, like everything outside the glass is just a fogged-up reflection. I sat down at my console, trying to shake it off. Just another night. Just another list of emergencies and false alarms. Except I couldn't help looking at that empty field on the map again. I'd pulled it up more than once in the last few days. Nothing but grass and uneven dirt. No signs of a house. Not even the skeleton of one. Half the part of me that believed in logic said the GPS had glitched. Maybe the call routed wrong. Maybe the coordinates were old. But the other half, well, it didn't have an explanation. I was halfway through my third coffee when the line lit up. The tone hit. The sharp digital chirp that always sends a little spike of adrenaline through my chest. And I patched in without thinking. 911. What's your emergency? Static. Not silence. Not background noise. Static. It wasn't the soft kind you get on bad reception. It was the kind that crackles hard, like it's chewing on the edges of your words. I tried again. This is 911. Can you hear me? And then, I did hear something. Yes. I froze. Not because someone answered, but because it was me. My voice. Not like a recording. Not like someone mocking me. It was me. Same tone. Same pace. The exact way I had just said the word yes in my head. I swallowed. Can you tell me your name? Static. Then, I'm in the floor. It was my voice again. The same cadence I was speaking in now, only duller like it was coming through wet wood. I leaned back, heart thumping. My mind scrambled for any rational angle. Prank? Cross line? Audio glitch? But it kept talking. They don't want me here. They crawl at night. I muted my mic, just for a second, and looked across the room. No one else had noticed. The other dispatchers were buried in their own calls. I unmuted. Where are you calling from? There was a pause, long enough that I thought maybe the call dropped. Then, same place you sent them last time. That field. I didn't need to check. I knew exactly what they meant. The GPS started pulling coordinates before I even thought about it. And sure enough, there it was. Same point. Same coordinates. Same patch of nothing in the middle of nowhere. I should have flagged a supervisor. Should have logged it as a possible line malfunction. But the way my own voice was coming back to me, I couldn't hand it over. What do you mean you're in the floor? Static swelled for a moment, so loud it distorted. Then, beneath them, I see their feet. And then, almost whispering, they don't blink. Something about the way it said they made my scalp prickle. My hands hovered over the keyboard. I was trained for callers in danger. For keeping them calm, extracting location details, looping in responders. I wasn't trained for whatever this was. I clear my throat. Can you tell me who's with you? They hear me now. It said it almost as if it wasn't speaking to me anymore. More like it was saying it to someone in the room with them. And then, the line didn't disconnect. It just went dead quiet. No static. No breathing. Just a flat absence of sound. Hello. Nothing. Protocol says you keep the line open as long as you can. So I did. For almost 3 minutes, I listened to nothing, staring at those same impossible coordinates glowing on the screen. And then it clicked. The coordinates weren't exactly the same. They were just a hair south, maybe 10 feet. And when I zoomed in, really zoomed in, the satellite view didn't show just a field. There was a darker patch in the grass. Long, rectangular, like the ground had sunk just slightly. I flagged it for units, marking it as possible entrapment. That's the closest I could get to describing it without sounding insane. 2 patrol cars and an ambulance rolled out. I stayed on the line the whole time, just in case they came back. But when the first unit radioed in, my stomach sank. They were on scene. It was just grass and mud. The darker patch was there, but it was soft. No boards, no trapdoor, no crawl space. I told them about the call. They humored me. Checked the area. Probed the ground. Nothing. They cleared in under 15 minutes. When I hung up, my headset felt heavier. I didn't log the voice match. Didn't write that it was me. Just caller unidentified. Location matched previous incident. I went home that morning and didn't sleep. Every creak in my floorboards felt different. Heavier. For the next 3 nights, I swore I could hear static when I was lying in bed. Faint, just beneath the hum of my fan. It wasn't until the 4th night that it happened again. Same tone, same line, same coordinates. But this time, it didn't start with static. It started with my own voice saying, "Why didn't you come down here?" And I realized the static wasn't coming through the line. It was underneath me that I've worked night shifts for almost 7 years. You learn to tune things out. The hum of the lights overhead, the slow tick of the clock, the dead silence in between calls. But there's one thing you never get used to. The sound of a child's voice on the other end. It was 2:14 a.m. when the line lit up. I had been leaning back in my chair, staring at the faint reflection of myself in the dark glass across from my desk. When the ringtone broke the silence, I straightened and slipped my headset on. 911, what's your emergency? At first, I didn't hear anything, just the faint hiss of the open line. I was about to repeat myself when I caught it. A voice, a small, trembling voice, so quiet I had to hold my breath to hear. "There's a boy under my bed." I frowned. My pen hovered above the notepad. "Sweetheart, what's your name?" I asked, keeping my voice soft. "Eli. How old are you, Eli?" 6. His voice was shaky, but the words were clear. I could almost see him, small frame, clutching the phone with both hands, talking just above a whisper because he was afraid someone might hear him. "Okay, Eli," I said gently. "Where are your parents?" "They're sleeping. Do you know your address?" There was a pause. I could hear him breathing, slow and careful. Then, so faint I almost thought I imagined it. "I can't say it too loud." I wrote it down anyway when he told me. "Can you tell me why you're calling?" I asked, though I already knew what he had said. Another long pause. Then, barely audible. "He's copying me." My fingers tightened around the pen. "Who is?" "The boy under my bed." It was the kind of thing you hear from kids sometimes, imaginary friends, monsters in the closet. You're trained to keep calm, to play along just enough to keep them talking until help gets there. "Can you tell me what you mean, Eli?" I said I was scared. He whispered, and he said it too. Just like me. He sounds like me. A faint click echoed in the line. My stomach tightened. It sounded like the phone shifting against his ear. "Is he still there now?" I asked. Another pause. I heard a rustle like fabric moving. "Yes." "How do you know?" There was a sound then. Not words. Not exactly. It was like my headset glitched for half a second and replayed Eli's last yes, but deeper, almost buried under static. "Yes." I straightened in my chair. "Eli, is your bedroom door locked?" "No." Yes." The other voice cut in. It wasn't delayed this time. It came right after his words. Same tone, same pitch, but not quite. There was a hollow quality to it, like it was coming from inside a pipe. I felt a bead of sweat roll down my temple. "Okay, Eli," I said slowly. "I want you to stay very still. Don't get out of bed. I'm sending police to your house right now. Can you stay on the phone with me?" Yeah, the other voice said. This time, there was no mistaking it. The sound was too close to the mic, too perfect a mimic to be coincidence. I kept my voice steady, but my hand was gripping the edge of the desk. "Do you see him, Eli?" "No. He's under the bed." "Under the bed," it echoed. The air in the call center felt heavy, thick. My chest tightened. Eli, I whispered. Can you tell me what he looks like? I can't see him, he whispered back. I can't see him, the thing repeated. Every hair on my arms stood on end. I signaled to my supervisor with a sharp wave, mouthing the address. She started dispatching units while I kept my voice calm. Eli, I want you to stay on the phone. Can you do that for me? Yes. Yes. I could hear him breathing faster now, and under it the same breathing pattern from the other voice, exact like it was synced. Eli, is the boy moving? There was a shuffle on the line. The sound of bed sheets shifting. He's touching my mattress. He's touching my mattress. I closed my eyes, willing the clock to move faster. Every second felt stretched, elastic. Okay, I said softly. Don't talk anymore, Eli. Just listen to me. Help is almost there. The line went silent except for breathing. 2 sets, in perfect unison. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could hear something else too. Something faint, almost like a low hum. Then, do you want to see me? It wasn't Eli. It was the other voice. I froze. My mouth went dry. Eli, I said. The line stayed quiet. Then softly, too soft, Eli said no. The other voice answered at the exact same time, overlapping him perfectly. No. The sound of footsteps pounded through my headset, rushed, heavy, but muffled, like they were under the floor. And then suddenly, where are you? The mimic asked. Not to Eli. To me. The question came in Eli's voice, but the words were wrong. The way it spoke, slow, curious, felt like it was trying the sentence on for size. I didn't answer. Where are you? It repeated. I glanced at the call timer. 4 minutes had passed. It felt like 20. Eli, I said carefully, I want you to... The line went dead. No click. No beep. Just a sudden, awful silence. I yanked my headset off and turned to my supervisor. Units there yet? She was already on the radio. Her face was pale. 2 minutes later, the update came in. Officers had arrived. The parents were found asleep in their room, completely unaware. Eli's bed was empty. No sign of forced entry. No footprints. No boy under the bed. The only thing they found was the phone, lying on the floor by the nightstand. The receiver was still warm, like someone had just been holding it. I couldn't sleep that morning. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that voice. The perfect mimicry. The way it learned, mid-sentence, how to sound more human. I kept asking myself, if it could copy Eli, how long before it could copy me? And worse, if it could copy me. Would anyone notice the difference? I didn't sleep much after that first call. You'd think I'd be used to the strange ones by now. I've been a dispatcher for almost 5 years. I've heard people screaming for help while drowning, whispering through broken teeth, gasping after being stabbed. And I've heard the nonsense ones too, drunk rambling, prank calls, kids trying to get a reaction. But this felt different. That kid's voice was still in my head, shaking, thin, like he was pressing the phone to his lips under a blanket. And that phrase, he's copying me. I kept thinking about how scared he sounded. Not the bratty, exaggerated fear of a kid scared of a shadow, but real, cold fear. The kind that makes your words stick in your throat. When the shift ended, I drove home through that low, gray morning fog, sipping cold coffee and trying to shake the thought of it. But my brain wouldn't let go. 2 nights later, I came back for the overnight shift. It was slow. Only a few calls trickled in. Most were routine. It was 2:14 a.m. when I picked up the call that brought all back. Hello. The voice was tiny again. I knew it before I even saw the caller ID. Same line. Same number. This is 911, I said, my stomach tightening. Can you tell me you're... He's still here. That was it. No greeting. No hesitation. The boy sounded like he'd been waiting for me to answer. I swallowed. Is this the same boy I talked to the other night? Yes. His voice cracked. It's worse now. I didn't even realize I was leaning forward in my chair until my headset cord tugged against my neck. What's worse? He's copying me better now. The words came out uneven, like he was whispering through shivers. A faint rustle came through the line. I froze. What do you mean better? He doesn't wait anymore. The silence that followed wasn't empty. There was breathing. 2 sets of it. One closer, one deeper. I knew to listen for environmental clues, clock ticks, outside noises, a TV in the background. but all I heard was that shallow inhale-exhale, and under it, the slow, heavy drag of something else. Then the boy said, "I'm scared." And half a second later, another voice, lower, distorted, but still his voice, repeated, "I'm scared." The mimic was perfect. Same tone, same breathiness. But when the echo came, there was something added to it. A faint smirk like it was enjoying saying the words. "Where are your parents right now?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "They're asleep. They don't hear him." "Is he under your bed again?" "Yes." "Can you describe what he looks like?" The boy began, but before he could finish, the other voice spoke first. "He looks like me." It was wrong. I can't explain exactly how, but the second voice didn't just copy the boy, it anticipated him. The rhythm was too quick, almost like it was finishing his thoughts before he could. My skin crawled. I'd taken hundreds of calls from kids. They ramble, they pause, they mix up details. But this kid was holding perfectly still, speaking in these short, sharp bursts. And then it got worse. "Tell me something only you know," I said. "Something he can't copy." There was a pause. Then, softly, "My middle name is Eli." The other voice cut in first. I clenched the mic in my hand. How did he know that? I asked before I could stop myself. He always knows now. I went into protocol mode. I flagged the call, started tracing it. The system said it was coming from the same location as before, an address that, according to our database, didn't exist. Not a typo, not a demolished property, just nothing. An empty point on the map. "Listen to me," I told him. "I'm going to send someone to help you, but I need you to leave the room. Can you do that for me?" "I can't," he whispered. "Why not?" "He's holding my ankle." My pulse thudded in my ears. "You need to get away from him." Then both voices, the boy's and the mimic, spoke at the same time. But the mimic wasn't just repeating now. It was weaving in extra words. "He's holding my ankle," the boy said. "He's holding my ankle so tight it will snap," the other said, overlapping him. The words braided together into something I couldn't untangle. I don't scare easy, but I swear my hand went cold right then. I kept him talking while dispatching a unit, even though I knew how this would go. The same as last time. The officers would drive to that coordinate, find nothing. No house. No boy. "Can you see his face right now?" I asked. "Yes." "What does it look like?" There was a long pause. I almost thought the call had dropped. Then he said, "It looks like me, but with no eyes." My breath caught, and in that exact moment, the mimic said, "It looks like me, but with your eyes." I didn't speak. I couldn't. I heard the faint scrape of something wooden, a creak like bed slats, shifting, then a low hum. It wasn't a song. It was just a single note, held too long, like a test tone. Both voices hummed together, and I swear for a second I thought I heard a third one joining in, deeper, farther away. "Are you still there?" I finally asked. The boy said, "Yes." The mimic said, "Yes, I'm here." And then the mimic laughed. Not a normal laugh. It was like it was trying to remember how to laugh. A sound too big for the mouth it was coming from. I yanked off my headset, heart hammering. I could still hear it faintly, the tinny echo bleeding from the earpiece. But when I put it back on, the line was dead. The officers came back empty-handed. They'd reached the coordinates, found a patch of woods, and nothing else. No lights, no voices, no sign of child. I didn't tell them about the mimicry. It's not exactly something you can put in the incident report without looking insane. But here's the part that's been eating at me. When I checked the call log, there was no record of the second voice. Not even his background noise. Just the boy's voice, alone, speaking in full sentences. And the words? Some of them weren't the ones I heard on the line. It's like my memory had been overwritten. I've been trying not to think about it, but I can't stop replaying the moment when the mimic spoke before the boy. How it knew his middle name. How it changed the sentence. And the worst part, the way it said your eyes. Not his. Not mine. Yours. Like it was talking to me. The next night, I sat in my car outside the dispatch center for a long time before going in. It was stupid. Nothing had happened outside the call. I was safe. But I kept glancing at the shadows between the parked cars, at the thin strip of darkness under the dash. Thinking about the space under a bed. My shift passed quietly. No strange calls, no whispers. But around 4 a.m., during a lull, I pulled up the audio file again. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I imagined the second voice. Maybe I wanted to hear something human in it. The playback was exactly as the log said, just a boy. But right before the line cut, in the faint hiss of static, there was something else. It was hard to hear at first, buried under the white noise. But if you turned the volume up enough, there it was. A whisper. Not repeating. Not copying. It was saying my name. I don't remember giving it my name. I don't remember the boy saying it either. But somehow it knew. And now I'm not sure if that night was just about him. Or if I've been under its bed this whole time that I didn't want to answer it. Not this one. But the line was flashing, and protocol doesn't give you the luxury of hesitating. When that call comes in, you take it, no matter how much your gut tells you to leave it alone. 911, what's your emergency? I heard him immediately. The boy. His voice was the same small, frightened sound from before. Thin, like it had to squeeze through a crack to reach me. He's still here, the kid whispered. I froze, my fingers tensing on the console. I remembered his last call, the way he'd said there was a boy under his bed, copying everything he said. The mimicry, the perfect repetition. My throat felt dry. This is the same boy from before, isn't it? The one who called about the... Yes. The word was faint, and right behind it, yes. It was the exact same pitch, the same breath. Only it didn't come after him. It came with him. I didn't even process it fully at first. My brain just marked it as odd, like an echo in a room that shouldn't have one. But then I realized it wasn't an echo. There were two voices, the real one and something else. And the second one wasn't lagging anymore. It was talking at the same time, perfectly in sync, like it knew what the boy was going to say before he said it. I pulled the receiver closer, almost leaning into it. Okay, listen to me. You're safe. Where are you right now? My bedroom, the boy whispered. My bedroom, the other voice said. Side by side. No delay. And then, in the same breath, the second voice added something, just 2 words. You're next. I swear I almost dropped the phone. My heart kicked so hard it felt like I'd swallowed a fist. Who else is there with you? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The boy didn't answer right away. I could hear him breathing, quick and uneven. Then, he says, things now. He says, things now. The other repeated, but again it kept going like it had been holding words in its mouth, waiting for a chance to spit them out. Wanna play? It said, the tone just a fraction sharper than the boy's. I gripped the desk until my fingers hurt. My headset felt too close, like the voice was pressing against my eardrum. Where are your parents? I asked. The boy's whisper came, thin and shaky. Downstairs. Downstairs, the mimic said. Can't hear them anymore. I jolted at that. What do you mean they can't hear them anymore? The boy started to answer, but his voice broke, and the other one finished it for him. They're sleeping. Too deep. A metallic taste filled my mouth, like adrenaline had replaced all the air. I flicked a glance at the call log, note address. He hadn't given it yet. Tell me where you live, right now. I said, sharper than I meant to. There was a pause, and in that pause, I could hear them thinking together, like they were passing the words back and forth in the same brain. Then they said it, at the same time. 42 Glenridge Lane. But the second voice tacked something on. Hurry. I typed the address into the dispatch system, sending it to the nearest unit, all the while keeping my ear to the line. What's he doing now? I asked. The boy's breath caught. He's moving. Moving, the mimic echoed. Closer. I could hear the faint sound of bedsheets rustling. Something light dragging against the carpet. He's looking at me, the boy whispered. He's looking at me, the mimic repeated, and then added, and you. I stopped breathing. For a second, I forgot how to. The weight of the headset on my ear felt wrong, like there was something on the other end looking back. Okay, I managed. You need to leave the room right now. Go to your parents. Can you do that for me? There was silence. Then, he says I can't, the boy whispered. He says I can't, the mimic chimed in, but you can try. Try what? I asked before I could stop myself. The answer came in 2 overlapping voices. Looking under the bed. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to say anything. But the boy's breathing was getting faster, and I could hear the faint squeak of the mattress shifting, like he'd moved his weight toward the edge. The mimic was humming now. just low enough that I couldn't make out the tune, but enough that it buzzed under my skin. Don't look, I said, more to myself than to him. Stay where you are. Help is coming. The boy's whisper came back, almost pleading. I think he's me. And the mimic, without missing a beat. I know I am. I swear my stomach turned over. I could hear my own breath in the receiver, shaky and uneven, and I hated that it felt like they could hear it too. Then, faintly, in the background, I heard footsteps. Not heavy, not adult, just soft, slow, deliberate. They're here, the boy whispered. They're here, the mimic said. Who? I asked. My voice cracked, and I hated it. Neither of them answered. But I heard the sound again, closer this time. And then another sound. A tap. On the phone. It wasn't static. It was like someone had put their finger right up against the mouthpiece and flicked it. Once. Twice. Stop that. I said automatically, my voice tighter than I meant. And both voices whispered back, perfectly overlapping. We're not touching it. That was the moment my skin went cold all over. I wanted to pull the headset off. I wanted to hang up. But I couldn't. Not until the responding unit got there. Just stay on the line with me, I said, though it sounded more like I was begging than instructing. The boy whispered, he's smiling. The mimic whispered, we're smiling. And then I heard it. So quiet I almost thought I imagined it. A third sound. Not a voice. Breathing. Right against my ear. I jerked back from the headset, my chair rolling into the desk behind me. My hand hovered over the mute button, over the disconnect. But I couldn't do it. I leaned in again, my pulse hammering. Are you still there? I asked. Two voices answered. Yes. Yes. And then, almost gently, the mimic added, you sound scared now. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just listened to the faint hiss of their breathing. Both of them, together, like they were sharing the same lungs. Somewhere in the background, I heard a creak. A door, maybe. Then a burst of static cut through the line, sharp and sudden, like someone had pressed their mouth right to the receiver. And in that split second before the noise faded, I swear I heard something else, something too low to be a whisper, too flat to be human speech. Like the sound of a tape rewinding. When it cleared, the boy's voice came back, trembling. He wants to know if he can talk to you alone. I don't know why that hit me harder than anything else, but it did. My hands started shaking. No, I said, forcing the word out. No, you stay on the line. Both of you stay. But the mimic cut in, its tone calm, almost warm. We were already talking. I was about to respond when I saw the update on my screen. Units on scene. My heart jumped. I kept my voice steady. Okay, the police are there now. You're safe. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then the boy whispered, they can't see him. They can't see me, the mimic said. But you can hear me. The line went dead. I thought I'd heard everything a 911 line could throw at me. I've had the screaming, the gunshots, the choking silence that means the caller didn't make it. But that night, it's the first time I felt like the call was still happening even after I hung up. The kid's voice had faded out somewhere between a whimper and a giggle. That other voice, the one that sounded just off enough to curl your stomach, had stopped too. The line went dead. I sat there for a second with my headset still pressed to my ear, just listening to nothing. I don't know why. Like I thought maybe I'd hear them breathing again, just faint, just enough to confirm I hadn't imagined it. When the responders pulled up on scene, I patched through the last coordinates. They said they'd call in when they made contact. I stared at the CAD screen. Just a normal-looking house on a normal street. 2-story, pale siding, little chain-link fence out front. Nothing about it said, there's something wrong here. Until Officer Duran's voice crackled back through. Dispatch. Be advised we've got a child. My shoulders relaxed a little. Copy. Child located. Any injuries? There was a pause. Too long for a simple yes or no. Then, negative injuries. But, we're going to need to confirm something. Stand by. The line went silent except for the occasional pop of static. I kept glancing at the timestamp, each second dragging longer than it should. Then his voice again, quieter now, like he'd turned away from his radio, but didn't think to release the button. They're saying they don't have a kid. I thought I'd misheard. Repeat your last. I heard a murmur in the background, muffled voices, maybe the parents. The residents state they do not, and have never had a child. I sat back in my chair, frowning. You're saying they don't know the boy? Dispatch. I'm telling you. They're both standing here, swearing up and down they've never seen him before tonight. But the kid's calling them mom and dad. The bullpen was quiet around me, most of the other dispatchers handling their own calls. But I felt separated from it, like there was a pane of glass between me and the rest of the room. I asked, is he physically okay? Can you bring him in? Yeah, physically fine. But Duran's voice trailed off again. Something's off. He's not stopping staring at them. Hasn't blinked once since we got here. A chill crawled up my arms. I didn't say anything for a second, just kept my eyes fixed on the digital map where their unit blinked green. The call should have been simple. Lost kid, found safe, reunite with family. Instead, there was this space between the facts that didn't add up. I asked for a description. Duran said about 7 years old. Pajamas. Hair's messy like he just rolled out of bed. Keeps holding his left arm like it's sore, but no visible marks. And I don't know how to say this without sounding crazy, but he looks like he's been outside longer than a few minutes. Explain. His feet are dirty. Like really dirty. Nails caked with mud. But the bottoms are pale, no abrasions. No cuts. No pebbles stuck in him. Just dirt. I didn't like the sound of that. Dirt without the damage meant it wasn't normal walking. Like he'd been carried, or dragged, or maybe the ground wasn't exactly ground. They brought him toward the cruiser. I could hear the faint sound of a child's voice through the open mic. I couldn't make out words, just the high, lilting tone, until it stopped mid-sentence. Abrupt, like someone hit pause. Then came this other sound. A whisper? No, more like a low hum. Not a tune, just noise. And the thing that made my stomach twist, it was in stereo. 2 voices at once. One faint, almost too soft to hear. The other closer, sharper, both from the same mouth. Dispatch. Duran again, sounding uneasy. He just asked where you were. I didn't answer right away. What? He's asking if you're on the phone still. I swallowed. My throat was suddenly dry. Tell him I'm here. There was a pause. I imagined Duran crouching down, relaying the message. Then a second later, a child's voice, not through the mic, but clean, direct, like it was piped right into my headset. Hi. It wasn't tinny like normal radio chatter. It was full, close, like he was right behind me. I ripped the headset off and stared at it. The cord swung slightly where I dropped on the desk. Across the room, one of the other dispatchers looked over, eyebrows raised. I forced a smile I didn't feel and put the headset back on. You still there, dispatch? Yeah, I say, my voice steady but my hands cold. Bring him in. The drive to the station should have been straightforward. But a few minutes later, Duran radioed and again his tone clipped. He's repeating us. Repeat. No, he's repeating us. Word for word. Before we even finish talking. Like, I'll start to say something, and he's already halfway through it. Even when it's something I wasn't planning on saying. That didn't make sense, but I didn't argue. They rolled in 8 minutes later. I watched through the glass as they walked the boy inside. His head didn't move much, but his eyes tracked everything. Not with curiosity, but with this still, waiting look. Like he was watching a movie he'd already seen. The parents were brought into a separate interview room. I caught a glimpse of them, middle-aged, tired, still in night clothes. The woman's hands kept twisting in her lap. The man just kept shaking his head. They're lying, the boy said when they were out of earshot. His voice was soft, but underneath, there was this faint echo, like another version of him was speaking just a fraction behind. You know them? I asked. They know me. And then that smile. Too slow. Like he'd remember to do it, because that's what kids are supposed to do when they say something cute. He kept looking at me, not scanning the room, not fidgeting, just looking. I thought about the earlier calls. The whisper, the mimicry. How each time, the other voice had been getting closer. When I asked for his name, he tilted his head. Which one? I didn't have an answer for that. Instead, I asked where he lived. With them, he pointed toward the interview room. Then, with the same finger, without lowering it, he turned and pointed at me. And here, the way he said here made my skin crawl. A few minutes later, Duran came to update me. The couple, they're sticking to it. No kids. Never had any. They're even willing to let us check records. Birth certs, medical school, nothing. When I glanced back at the boy, He was still staring, still smiling. And under that smile, I swear I heard it again. The double voice. The faint, wrong one getting clearer. I didn't want to think about it, but it sounded like mine. The IT was around 2:30 a.m. when the storm started. Not rain, not thunder, but the kind of wind that makes you think something's outside your window, watching. The lights in the dispatch center flickered once, then steadied. We'd had calls about down power lines all night, but nothing unusual, until his voice came through. I was halfway through sipping my coffee when the line clicked, and a man's breathing filled my headset. Not panicked, not yet, but uneven, like he'd been running or holding his breath for too long. 911, what's your emergency? I said, setting my cup down. He didn't answer right away. I could hear the wind whipping against whatever place he was in. A faint creak of wood. And then, finally, they're back. His voice was rough, almost a whisper, like he was afraid the phone itself might carry the sound too far. Sir, I need you to tell me who's back, I said, keeping my tone calm. The shadows, he said, and that was when the panic hit. It came out of him in this sudden burst, his voice shaking, his breath quick and loud in my ear. They're moving again. Outside. I can see them. There's no light out here, no power anywhere. Nothing, but they still move. You hear me? They move. I straightened in my chair and typed quick notes into the system. Sir, what's your address? He rattled it off. County Line Road, far out in the rural stretch where cell reception fades and the only light at night is from your own porch bulb. Except his wasn't working. I'm in a dead zone, he kept saying. Everything's out. No phone, no power. I don't even know how this call is going through. Are you alone? I asked. Yes, he said, but then he hesitated, and I heard it. A low scraping sound, not from his phone, but somewhere in the background, like something dragging along gravel, slow, deliberate. He whispered into the receiver. They stop and I look at them, but they get closer every time. I want to tell him it was just animals, maybe someone messing around, but the way he said it, there was no mistaking the fear. It was deep, bone deep. Okay, I said, we've got deputies on the way. Stay inside. Lock your doors. Don't go near the windows. He laughed, a short, broken sound. There's nothing to lock. They don't need doors. My stomach sank a little. Sir, I need you to stay on the line with me. But then the call cut. Not like a normal drop. No static, no tone. Just gone. Like he'd never been there in the first place. I tried calling him back. Straight to nothing. Signal dead. For a moment, the room felt colder. I sat there with my headset still on, staring at the last number dialed, my own reflection faint in the dark monitor screen. The deputies radioed back 10 minutes later. They were heading down County Line, but the entire stretch was black. No streetlights, no porch lights, not even the glow from farm equipment or distant houses. They said it was like driving into a cave. I patched them through and kept listening. At one point, I thought I heard the wind on their end, but it didn't sound like wind. It had rhythm, almost like footsteps. They didn't see anyone outside the property when they arrived, but they also didn't see him. The house was open, front door swinging slightly in the breeze. Table overturned. A chair tipped over like someone stood up too fast. But no man. The deputies swept the area. No tracks in the dirt. No car in the drive. And here's the part that stuck with me. They said the air felt heavy out there, like walking into a place where sound doesn't carry right. One of them said it felt like being underwater without the wet. The last note in my log that night was simple. Caller reported moving shadows in total blackout. Deputies arrived. No sign of caller. But that's not the whole truth. Because when I took my headset off, I realized the wind outside our own dispatch building had stopped. And yet, I still heard something moving that I thought maybe the first call was just panic. People out here in the rural stretches of County Line get jumpy during storms. Coyotes in the yard, a trespasser passing through. Fear can twist anything into something worse. But he called back. The same voice. The same frantic breathing. Only this time, there was something in it, something that made my chest tighten before he even finished his first sentence. They're closer now, he said. I could hear the strain in his throat. The words came out thin, like they'd been pulled from somewhere deep in him, like they hurt to say. Sir, I said, trying to keep my tone level, you're safe inside your home, right? A pause. just his breathing. I could tell he'd moved the phone slightly, like he was glancing at something. There in the yard, I glanced up at the clock. 2:14 a.m. The same shadows you mentioned before? I asked. I didn't want to feed into his delusion, if that's what it was, but I also didn't want to shut him down. Yes, he whispered. Then, after a shaky breath, but there's no moon tonight. No lights. There shouldn't be shadows. I looked at the map on my screen. County Line Road was still marked as a dead zone. A complete blackout. No power, no street lamps, no porch lights. It was true. Without any light source, shadows shouldn't exist. I tried to sound steady. Could they be people with flashlights? Maybe. They're not holding anything, he cut in. They're flat. They're wrong. His voice cracked on the last word. There's a rustling sound. Maybe curtains moving. Maybe his hand shaking against the receiver. I can't even see them clearly, he went on, but I can feel them. They're watching the house. I know they are. I didn't say anything for a moment. There's a fine line between calming someone down and making them feel like you don't believe them. Out here, a person's only lifeline can be the voice on the other end of the line. All right, I said finally. I have responders en route. I need you to stay where you are, keep the doors locked, and... They moved again. I flinched at how fast he said it, like it was urgent enough to cut me off. They were by the fence. Now, they're closer to the porch. I could hear his breathing quicken. You can see them? I asked. No, he said slowly. I can't. I only see the shapes. But I can hear the wood creak out there. Like they're heavy. Like they're dragging something. That last detail lodged itself in my mind. Shadows didn't drag things. I adjusted my headset, my eyes flicking to the ETA on the nearest deputy, 7 minutes away. 7 minutes isn't long, but when you're watching something you can't explain creep toward you in the dark, it's forever. Sir, listen to me. You're doing the right thing by staying inside. Help is, I don't think they're outside anymore. The way he said it wasn't loud, but it hit me harder than if he'd screamed it. What do you mean? I asked. His voice lowered, almost like he was afraid they'd hear him. They're in the walls. I heard scratching, just for a second, like something trying to slip between the boards. Something about the way he described it, slip between, made my skin crawl. I pressed the button to silently flag the call for an urgent approach. The deputy's ETA updated to 5 minutes. I told him, you're safe where you are. Can you tell me exactly where in the house you are right now? I'm in the front room, near the big window. I wanted to tell him to move away from it, to go somewhere with fewer entry points. But before I could, he said, it's gone quiet now. Quiet can mean a lot of things. But in my experience, it's rarely a good sign. Do you still see the shadows? I asked. A pause. Then, no. But I feel them. They're close. Closer than before. There was a subtle shift in his voice now. Not just fear, something heavier. Like a weight was pressing down on him. And then something happened that I can't explain. Through the phone, under his breathing, I heard a faint, clicking sound. Slow, irregular, like the sound of fingernails on glass. It made my stomach tighten. Is that you? I asked. He didn't answer at first. Then, in a voice that was almost a whisper, he said, it's on the glass. My pulse picked up. Don't go near it. I'm not, he said. But I could hear in his breathing that he was leaning forward, that he couldn't help but look. I didn't want him to. What do you see? I asked, my voice low without meaning to. Another pause. Then, it's like a shadow of a hand. But the fingers, they're too long. I gripped the mic tighter. They're moving, but there's nothing there to cast them, he went on. They're just moving on their own. The clicking sound grew sharper. Faster. Like it knew I could hear it too. The man's voice dropped into something shaky and small. They want in. I don't remember breathing while I waited for the sound of the deputy's car to cut into the call. All I could hear was the clicking. All I could imagine was a black outline pressed against the glass, its fingers scraping to get inside. They're not supposed to be here, the man whispered. Who's not? I asked. The shadows, he said. They don't belong here. I think they came with the dark. Finally, I heard the faint crackle of a radio from outside his house. Sir, someone is outside. That's the deputy. Don't open the door for anyone else. Do you understand me? Yes, he said, but he didn't sound relieved. I listened as he moved toward the door. I could hear the boards creak under his feet. And then, faintly, the sound of knuckles on wood, the deputy knocking. But right under it, I heard something else. A soft, scraping drag along the porch. Like something moving away. Or maybe something moving closer. The man opened the door. I heard muffled voices, his and the deputy's. But the line stayed open long enough for me to hear the man say one last thing before it disconnected. They're gone now. He didn't sound happy about it. He sounded like he was waiting for them to come back. And I knew, in that kind of dark, they always do that. I don't think I've ever heard a phone line breathe before. But that night it did. Not in the literal sense, not like a person pressed their lips to the receiver and exhaled. It was more like the line itself was alive, stretching and contracting, in and out, almost in rhythm with my own chest. And it wasn't static. Static is random, jagged, hissing. This was deliberate. The man, the same rural caller from earlier, was still on the line. His voice was low, shaky. He told me the shadows were in his yard now. I remember my throat going dry when he said it, because I knew, in every sense of the word, there was no moon that night. No streetlights. No power for miles. No light at all. So how could there be shadows? I was already leaning forward, knuckles pale against the console. My headset pressed tight, like I could force my way into a space just by listening harder. And that's when I noticed it. The first skip. He was talking, describing their movement, how they didn't walk so much as slide. And then the words just broke. Not like he stuttered, not like the line cut out. It was like I'd been listening to a book on tape, and someone reached in and deleted a sentence. One moment he was saying, "They're closer to the..." And the next, I was hearing, "Don't have faces anymore." I froze. My hands didn't move on the keyboard. I didn't even type the words into the incident log, because I didn't know if I'd just imagined it. "Sir, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? You said they were closer to the..." I asked, trying to sound casual. He didn't answer that part. He just muttered, "They don't have faces anymore," like it was the most natural continuation in the world. I tried to swallow. The dryness in my throat felt worse. I made myself keep the tone level. "When you say they don't have faces..." Another skip. This one was worse. I didn't even catch the transition. 1 second I was mid-question, my own voice in my ears. The next, his voice was saying, "Standing over the well." The air conditioning unit in the corner clicked and rattled to life, and the sound nearly made me pull the headset off. Because something about those gaps, those missing seconds, made the silence between them feel dangerous. Like something had actually happened in those seconds, and I just wasn't allowed to hear it. I kept glancing at the timer on the call screen. The clock didn't stop. That was the thing. The time kept moving forward normally. Only my experience of it was jumping. And each time, I could feel this slight disorientation, like stepping onto a treadmill without realizing it was running. My stomach shifted just enough to make me queasy. The other dispatchers didn't notice anything. I didn't tell them yet. Part of me didn't want to speak it out loud, in case saying it made it worse. "Sir, are you safe inside?" I asked, focusing on the protocol. There was a pause, then a long inhale from his side. I thought maybe the skip would happen again, but instead, he spoke normally. "I locked the doors," he said. His voice was trembling. "They don't come in. They just watch. But they're closer now. Too close. I can hear the dirt moving." "The dirt?" I asked. That's when the next skip hit. "Don't touch the glass." I blinked, my mind scrambling to figure out what I just missed. I checked the waveform display on my console. It had no breaks, no dropouts. The computer thought everything was fine. But I knew. I felt the missing space in my head. "Sir, who's not touching the glass?" The shadows. Silence. Then, almost in a whisper, "They know you're listening." Another skip. This one was violent. Not the words themselves, but the effect it had on me. It was like being pulled out of my own chair for a split second, like my consciousness lurched forward and my stomach stayed behind. One instant, he was saying my name, which I hadn't given him, and the next, I was already halfway through typing something in a log without remembering why. My fingers froze on the keyboard. I didn't type my name anywhere. I didn't tell him. I don't even answer the phone with it. We don't. It's always 911. What's your emergency? My heartbeat was loud enough that it made a faint echo in the ear cups of my headset. I glanced over at Mark, the night supervisor. He He was on another call, head down, scribbling something in his notebook. It hit me then, if I told him about the skips, about the way the man said my name, he'd think I was tired. Stressed. Hell, maybe I was. But I knew I wasn't making this up. The man started talking again, faster now. They moved different now. Before it was slow, like they didn't care if I saw. Now they're rushing, but when I look straight, they stop. They skip. Front doors breathing. My eyes darted to the call timer again. Still counting up, steady. No interruptions. Sir, I need you to tell me if you see anyone who isn't. Skip. Don't step outside, not even to check. This was wrong. This was so wrong. It wasn't a bad signal. It wasn't interference. It was as if someone, something, was removing parts of the conversation before they reached me. Like they were curating what I was allowed to know. And the more I thought about that, the worse it got. Because if they could take seconds away, what else could they take? How much could they cut before I even realized it was gone? I didn't let him know I noticed. I kept my voice steady. Sir, do you have any lights? Candles, lanterns. Skip. They don't like fire. That one was longer than the others. I checked the time again. I'd lost maybe 3 for seconds. And yet I had no memory of anything being said in between. I started writing notes in the margins of the call log. Not about his words, but about the skips themselves. The first was maybe half a second. The second, closer to a full second. By now, they were getting longer. I didn't want to know what happened when the skips reached minutes. The man's breathing was louder now, almost like he was moving the phone closer to his mouth without realizing it. They're whispering, he said softly. They're saying your name again. Skip. Won't leave until it's dark forever. That's when I realized something that made my skin go cold. It was already pitch black where he was. No moon, no stars, no power. If they were waiting for dark forever, what did that even mean? The man's voice trembled. I think they're behind me now. Skip. Inside the line. I don't even know if I heard that one correctly. It was like he was speaking through a pillow, but the words were sharp enough to stick in my head. I wanted to ask him what that meant, but my throat locked up because the breathing sound on the line wasn't his anymore. It was slower, wetter, and it was synced with mine. I pulled the headset slightly away from my ear, holding it in the air, my hand shaking. The breathing stayed exactly the same volume. And then, skip. I was sitting back in my chair, both hands on the desk, with no memory of moving. The call timer had jumped ahead nearly 10 seconds. Mark was looking over at me now, brow furrowed. You okay? He mouthed. I nodded, too fast, and turned back to my console. The man was still speaking, his voice smaller, like he'd gone far away from the phone. They're almost done, he whispered. Skip. They said you're next. I didn't see the footage until the next morning. It had been a long night, a strange one, and I was still half asleep when the captain came in with a flash drive. He didn't say much, just slid it across my desk and told me to watch it all the way through. Then he left. No explanation. No coffee. Just that. The label on the drive was handwritten. Block letters. Miller, County Line. I knew the name. Miller was the responder they sent out after my last call with that man in the farmhouse. The one who kept talking about the shadows. I'd been on the dispatch floor for 12 hours straight that night. The calls had blurred together. Barking dogs, drunken fights, the usual. But that one had stuck to me like wet cloth. He'd said they were in the yard now. Said there was no moonlight. Said they didn't move the way people move. Miller had been the closest unit. Rural patrol. He had a generator in his truck, a big one. The kind they used when the grid went out in the deep country. That was why they sent him. No power, no lights. You can't search a property in the dark. I plugged the flash drive in. The video opened in a standard body cam format. Timestamp in the corner. August 10th, 2:42 a.m. The first few minutes were nothing. Just the inside of Miller's truck. His breathing. The crackle of the radio. My own voice faint in the background. The last bit of me giving him directions. It felt wrong to hear myself like that, recorded. I sounded calm. I didn't feel calm that night. Then the door opened and the sound changed. The air outside was heavy. No insects, no frogs, no wind. Just that weird, weightless silence you get when snow is about to fall. Except it was summer. Miller's flashlight swept over the gravel drive. The beam shook slightly, not because his hands were unsteady. Miller's the type who could keep his aim dead on even in a hurricane, but because the ground under him seemed to dull the light. It was strange. The further the beam went, the more it thinned, like dust was catching it. You could hear his boots crunching. Somewhere off camera, the generator sat in the truck bed. It wasn't on yet. He hadn't pulled it. He was scouting first. The farmhouse came into view. Old, 2 stories, peeling paint. The windows were black. The front door was open. I don't know why that detail stuck in my throat, but it did. He called out, just a man's name, the one I'd given him. His voice sounded small against that kind of quiet. No answer. He stepped closer, the camera catching the slant of the porch. Boards warped from rain. A rocking chair sat on its side like someone had kicked it over and left it there. He went in. Inside, the air looked thicker. I can't explain it better than that. Even on video, you could see it. Like heat shimmer, but with no heat. He swept the light around. Empty hallway, a couch in the next room, papers scattered on the floor. Then, a shape. Not a person. Not an animal. Just darker than the dark it was in. It was standing at the far end of the hallway. It didn't move when the light hit it. Didn't step back. Didn't vanish. I paused the video without meaning to. My finger just stopped it. I sat there staring at that single frame. Miller's beam cutting across the wall. That thing at the end. Still, when I hit play again, Miller didn't say anything. Didn't radio. He just kept his light on it and started backing up. And that's when he went for the generator. Cut to outside. The cam jerked as he pulled the heavy unit out of the truck bed. You could hear his breath now. Faster, sharper, but still no panic. Miller wasn't the type. He wheeled it closer to the house. Pulled the cord once, twice. The engine coughed, then caught. The floodlight snapped on. The whole yard lit up like noon. And that's when I understood why they'd given me this footage. There weren't just 1 or 2 of those shapes. There were dozens. They were spread across the yard, at the edges between the trees, near the shed. All of them were turned toward the house. Toward him. The light had frozen them mid-step. I don't mean they stopped moving when the light came on. I mean they were caught mid-motion, knees bent, arms forward like statues. They didn't blink, didn't sway. The floodlight washed over them, and they just stayed. Miller stood there for a full 30 seconds, breathing hard, trying to take it in. You could hear the engine humming behind him. Then one of them moved. It didn't walk. It didn't run. It just changed. One frame it was leaning forward. The next its head was turned, facing the camera. And then another turned. And another. Until all of them, every single frozen figure, had their heads tilted toward him. I've never seen Miller break before, but I heard it in his voice when he finally radioed in. That tight, clipped tone, like he was trying to keep his throat from closing. Dispatch, I don't know what I've got. There. The audio glitched, just like the call I'd taken before. Closer than they were. I can't. Another skip. Moving when the light's on. Only when I'm not. The sentence didn't finish. It jumped. God, they're all looking at me now. The footage kept rolling. He was backing up toward the truck, still keeping the light on them. But they were different now. Their outlines were sharper. The longer they stood in the light, the more you could see. They weren't made of shadow. They weren't smoke. They were solid. And they were wrong. The joints bent the wrong way. The proportions were off. Arms too long, necks too thin. The faces, if you could call them that, were smooth. Featureless. The only thing that changed was the way they tilted their heads, following his every step. Miller reached the truck. He didn't turn his back to them. Just one hand feeling for the handle, the other gripping the flashlight. Then the generator sputtered. It was just a hiccup, a tiny dip in the engine, but the light dimmed for half a second. And in that half second, every single one of them moved. Not much, just enough to be closer. He swore under his breath. Yanked the cord on the generator again. The engine steadied, but they were now only 20 feet away. I don't remember breathing during the rest of the footage. Miller started circling the truck, keeping the light between him and them. His voice was tight. Dispatch, I need backup now. I could hear myself on the radio, saying units were on the way, but I sounded far away. Fainter than I should have. Like the recording was pulling my voice back into the dark. The figures didn't move again. Not while the light was steady. But the fuel was running low. You could hear it. The change in the generator's pitch, the slow weakening of the beam. Miller knew it too. He tried to edge toward the driver's side, maybe to make a run for it, But the instant the light shifted off one of them, just one, it was suddenly there, half the distance closed. The camera caught the moment his composure cracked. A sharp inhale. A muttered no, no, no. He didn't run. That was the worst part. He couldn't. The generator coughed again. And this time, the light went out. The screen went black. The audio picked up everything. The shuffle of dozens of feet on grass. The deep, collective inhale like air being pulled out of the world. Then Miller screaming. Not shouting, not calling for help, screaming. The light came back on for a split second, maybe from the recoil of the cord. Enough to see them. Not frozen this time. All of them were right in front of him. And every single head was tilted toward the camera. The video cut there. I sat at my desk for a long time after that. The morning light coming in through the blinds didn't make me feel any better. Miller didn't make it back. The report says missing. That's the word they used. Not killed. Not presumed dead. Just gone. The generator was found in the yard, fuel tank empty. The truck was still there, door open, keys in the ignition. But there were no footprints. Not his, not theirs. Just grass. Perfectly still. I haven't been able to listen to calls the same way since. Because sometimes between the static, I hear it again, that half-second shuffle when the light goes out. And I think about the way they all turned to face the camera. Like they knew someone else was watching. When you start at dispatch, everyone tells you the same thing. Don't get attached to the voices. They're not people. Not to you. They're just signals. Wires. Sound. You're the lifeline, but you don't get to climb down it. I was still new. 3 weeks into the night shift. Still figuring out which creaks in the building meant the heater kicking on and which meant the floorboards just settling. That night was slow. We'd had a couple of noise complaints, one drunk driver call that fizzled out before we could get a plate number, and one wrong number that was just breathing. Not heavy, panicked breathing, the soft, slow kind, like someone falling asleep with the phone pressed to their mouth. The room smelled like burnt coffee and dust. You don't notice the dust right away. It's in the vents, in the cracks of the filing cabinets. The kind of old building smell that settles into your hair. Around 2 a.m., our supervisor, Pete, came out of the back room holding a clipboard. He tossed down my desk and said, "Storage cleanup tomorrow. You're low on the roster. That means you're helping." I groaned. He ignored me and went back to the break room. When you hear storage at dispatch, you don't picture much. Maybe some old monitors, boxes of paper logs, ancient computers with floppy drives. I didn't know there was a basement. The next night, I followed Pete down the narrow stairs. The air got cooler the lower we went. There was that smell again, the same dusty dryness, but sharper, older. Like paper that's been locked away too long. The storage room was bigger than I expected. Shelves lined the walls, stuffed with binders, cardboard boxes, and loose stacks of paper. There were rows of filing cabinets, some rusted around the handles. Pete pointed at a far corner. "Start over there. Anything with a blue sticker is trash. Red means archive. If you find any electronics, bring them up to me." I started stacking boxes onto a cart. Most of it was boring, weather reports from the 90s, old incident logs, tapes from training drills. Then I saw it, a box on the bottom shelf, tucked so far back it almost blended into the wall. No label, just a layer of thick, gray dust. When I pulled it out, I felt something shift inside, heavy but not like papers. I set it on the floor and brushed the top with my sleeve. The cardboard was soft from age. I opened it. Inside were cassette tapes. At first I thought they were old training recordings, but none of them had dates. None had labels at all. Just black plastic, stacked neatly in 2 rows. I picked one up. The tape inside was cloudy, like it had been fogged over from the inside. I'd never seen that before. When I brought the box upstairs, Pete frowned. "Where'd you get those?" "Bottom shelf." No label. He stared for a moment. Then he said, "They're not in the system. Probably trash. I'll take them." But there was something about the way he reached for them, too quick, too casual, that made me pull back. "I can catalog them," I said. "You don't need to." It wasn't a request. Still, when Pete left for a smoke break, I took the top tape out of the box and slipped it into my hoodie pocket. Back at my desk, I dug through the supply drawer until I found the old tape player we used for training lectures. The kind with big, clunky buttons, and a speaker that crackled when you turned it on. I closed my eyes, pressed play. The tape clicked, hissed, then went silent for a few seconds. I thought maybe it was blank. Then I heard a woman's voice. Don't know where I am. Her voice was shaky, but not panicked, like she was trying to keep herself calm. I waited for the dispatcher's voice, but there was nothing. Just her breathing, pausing. It's dark. There aren't any windows. She trailed off, and I heard what sounded like footsteps. Slow, heavy ones. Not hers. She whispered something I couldn't make out. Then clearer. It's getting closer. There was a faint hum in the background. Not electrical. More like a refrigerator, but deeper. Then the sound cut. Not like the call ended. More like the tape skipped. When it came back, her voice was louder, sharper. Please, just tell me where I am. I can't find the door. I felt my mouth go dry. Another skip. It's right outside. And then the tape clicked off. I rewound it and listened again, trying to catch the missing parts, but they weren't there. Just jumps in time, like whole seconds had been cut out. I pulled the tape out and stared at it. No label. No date. No record that the call ever existed. The rest of the shift crawled by. Every time Pete walked by, I slid the tape into my desk drawer and kept my face blank. When my shift ended, I didn't go home. I went back down to the basement. The box was still there. I knelt on the cold concrete floor and counted 12 tapes. All unlabeled. All cloudy inside. I took another one. This time, I listened right there in the basement, crouched in the corner like a kid hiding a secret. The call started mid-sentence. Don't think it's a person. A man's voice. Low, steady. Not scared yet. There's something in the yard. By the shed. It's not moving right. His breathing was uneven, like he was trying not to be obvious about it. A faint wind noise picked up, maybe from his phone. Then a sound I can still hear if I think about it too hard. A scraping, like metal dragging on concrete, but slow. Then a skip. He was whispering now, closer to the house. I didn't move. Another skip. At the window. And then nothing. I didn't even notice Pete standing in the doorway until he cleared his throat. What are you doing down here? I shoved the tape into my hoodie pocket before standing. Cataloging. His eyes flicked to my pocket. Don't listen to those. What? They're unprocessed. Bad recordings. Not for training. He waited until I walked past him. Then I heard him lock the basement door behind me. I didn't sleep that day. I just lay in bed, thinking about the woman in the dark room and the man with the thing in his yard. I told myself I wouldn't listen to more. That wasn't my job. But the next night, when Pete got called to handle an incident in the field, I knew I had an hour alone. I took the whole box to my desk. One by one, I played them. A child's voice saying, "She's under the floor." A man sobbing, whispering, "It knows I called you." A woman screaming, but the scream cut off mid-breath, replaced by the sound of something wet. Every tape skipped. Every single one. Whole pieces missing, as if someone had gone through and sliced the recordings apart. But the voices, they all had the same hum in the background. That deep, almost mechanical hum. By the time Pete came back, I had the box back in the basement. But I kept one tape. Just one. It's in my apartment now. I don't know why I haven't thrown it away. Maybe because sometimes, when the city gets quiet late at night, I think I can hear that hum coming from somewhere down the hall. And maybe I want to know what happens in the missing seconds that I didn't mean to listen to another one. After that first night with the tapes, I told myself it was just curiosity, a rookie mistake. We've all heard weird calls before. People high, drunk, or just lonely. You log it, move on. But those tapes weren't logged. They weren't even supposed to be here. That dusty cardboard box had no case number, no date. Just black plastic cassettes with numbers scribbled in fading pen. And the one I picked next didn't have a label at all. The others, at least, had something, a year, a month, sometimes do not use written in red. This one was just bare. The tape inside looked warped, like it had been heat damaged. I told myself I'd give it 1 minute. Just enough to check if it was even playable. It started with silence. Not the clean hiss of a blank tape, but the kind where you can hear the space between things. Little pops, tiny static shifts, like the air inside the recording wasn't steady. Then, a woman's voice. "Hello." I froze. She didn't sound like she was calling in for help. Not yet. More like she was testing to see if anyone was there. I almost stopped the player. Part of me didn't want to hear whatever was coming next. Please, I don't have much time. Her breathing was sharp, uneven. There's something in my house. It's in the hallway now. Her words were clear. No panic screaming, no background chaos. Just her stating it like she'd already accepted it. I glanced over at the old logbook on the desk. My hand twitched toward a pen out of habit. That instinct to write down an address, cross street, anything. She gave one. I'm at 12, Lantern Road. Please send someone fast. It was automatic. My brain pictured the street layout. I'd lived in this town my whole life. I know the roads like the back of my hand. Lantern Road doesn't exist. The woman on the tape kept talking. I can hear it breathing through the door. Please hurry. Her voice cracked slightly on please, but it wasn't desperation. It was more like she was holding herself together by force. Something knocked in the background. 3 slow knocks. Then a pause. She whispered into the phone like she was afraid it could hear her. It's just standing there. I realized I was gripping the sides of the cassette player so tightly my fingers ached. The recording picked up her footsteps, fast, uneven, moving away from the sound. Then a creak of floorboards, followed by a door clicking shut. There was a long silence. Then, it found me. She didn't scream it. She didn't shout. She said it like someone reading a fact off a page. The tape hissed for a while after that, and I thought maybe that was it. That she dropped the phone or cut the line. But then she spoke again. You don't believe me, do you? Her tone was different now. The words weren't directed at whoever had been on the other end of the call. It felt like she was talking to me. The hairs on my arm stood up. She kept going. You're just listening. Sitting there, pretending this is a story. But I can't hear you breathing. I reached over and yanked the stop button. The room felt smaller, like the air had thickened. I could hear my own breathing in the silence. Too loud, too real. I sat there for a long minute, staring at the player. My reflection stared back from the glossy surface, pale, wide-eyed, jaw-tight. The thing is, she was right. Not about me specifically. I mean, she couldn't have known who'd be listening years later. But that feeling, the way her voice cut through the decades, as if the tape wasn't recorded back then, but now, with me as the intended audience, it crawled under my skin. I needed to prove it was nothing. I pulled up the digital street registry for the town. No Lantern Road. Not in the last 80 years. Checked county records, too. Nothing. Then I made the bigger mistake. I searched for any calls to that address in the 911 archives. And there it was. Not a call log exactly. More like a placeholder entry. No name, no date. Just caller, female, disconnected. Address, 12, Lantern Road, invalid. That meant someone had tried to log it, but the system rejected it. It's rare, but it happens, usually when prank callers make up locations. But why keep the tape? Why hide it in an unmarked box instead of destroying it? I told myself I'd just listen one more time. Get every detail, write it down, and then put it away for good. When I pressed play again, the tape didn't start where it had before. There was no hello, this time. No knocks. Instead, the woman's voice came through instantly. You came back. I nearly dropped the player. I hadn't rewound it yet. That's impossible with cassettes. You can't just skip to a new part unless you manually fast forward or rewind. But somehow, she was further along in the conversation. I'm upstairs now, she said softly. It's at the bottom of the stairs. The light doesn't work up here. Her breathing was closer to the mic this time. I could hear the wet click in her throat between words. She whispered, "It knows I called." I didn't realize I was leaning toward the speaker until my forehead almost touched it. The sound of slow, dragging footsteps came through the tape. Each one matched perfectly with the faint creaks of my own floorboards in the storage room. I pulled back fast, my chair scraping the ground. The woman spoke again, but it was quieter, almost buried under the hiss of the tape. "Don't look at it." The footsteps stopped. And then, in a voice that was not hers, something whispered a single word right against the recorder. "Closer." The tape clicked off. Not stopped off, like it had reached the end. I just sat there, staring at it. My fingers hovered over the eject button for a long time before I finally pressed it. The cassette inside was ice cold. I shoved it back in a box, shoved the box against the far wall, and walked out. Locked the storage room. I told myself I wasn't going to think about it again. But all night, I kept hearing those slow footsteps. Not in the room, not in the hall, in my head. Playing over and over, perfectly in time with my own breathing until I couldn't tell which was which. The next day, I came in early. Not for the tapes. Not because I wanted to listen again. I told myself I just needed to check the logbook one last time to make sure I hadn't missed something. But when I unlocked the storage door, the box was sitting in the middle of the floor. Not where I'd left it. And the unlabeled tape was lying on top, as if someone had carefully placed it there that I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I laid there with my eyes open, the glow from the streetlight leaking through the blinds, drawing pale lines across the ceiling. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw her. That woman from the tape. The one whose voice didn't belong anywhere. I thought I'd imagined it. Or maybe it was some strange, unsolved call from years ago. But that address, it wasn't real. Not then. Not now. And still, when I finally drifted into shallow sleep, my mind kept building it. A house in a place that wasn't mapped. A road without signs. A porch light flickering against a black forest. And her standing just beyond the light, her mouth moving in slow, silent words I couldn't hear. When I got to work the next evening, the box was still there in the corner. I left it out instead of putting it back in storage. That was the first mistake. The second mistake was deciding to listen to just one more tape. It was the last one in the stack. No label, no date, no number. It felt lighter than the others, as if time had hollowed it out. I sat down at the desk, put my headphones on, and pressed play. At first, there was nothing. Just a low hiss, like air moving through a long, empty tunnel. And then a voice. A man's voice this time. Calm, even, almost like he was reading something. "This is for you." My stomach tightened. I didn't recognize the voice, but something about the way he said it made my skin crawl, like he was speaking directly into my ear. There was a pause, and then he started describing things. Not crime scenes, not emergencies. My apartment, the living room, the couch I bought secondhand when I first moved here, the chipped coffee mug I kept on the end table, even the dent in the wall from when I dropped a bookshelf last year. He named them, all of them, in the order you'd see them if you walked in through my front door. I stopped the tape. I just sat there, breathing hard, telling myself it was impossible. Maybe it was a prank from someone at the station. Maybe they'd been to my place before. Maybe I'd told them too much about where I lived. I looked over at the other desks. No one was paying attention to me. I hit play again. "Now you're standing," the voice said. "You're looking at the blinds, thinking about closing them." I froze. I had been thinking that. "Don't bother. It's too late." I yanked the headphones off, the sound spilling out faintly from the recorder. But even from a distance, I could still hear the man speaking. "Go home. Listen until the end." I should have told someone. I should have locked the box back up and pretended I never found it. But there was something in his tone, something that wasn't a threat exactly. It was worse. It was certainty. When my shift ended, I took the tape with me. That was the third mistake. The night was cold and damp. My breath hung in the air as I walked up the steps to my apartment building. The hallway lights buzzed overhead. I kept glancing behind me, expecting to see, I don't know, something. I locked the door, pulled the curtains tight, sat down on the floor by the coffee table, and slid the tape into my old cassette player. The hiss started again, louder this time, like the sound of wind against the walls. "You're home now," the voice said. I didn't answer. I don't know why I felt like I had to, but I didn't. "You left the kitchen light on." I turned. It was on. I hadn't touched it. My chest felt tight. My pulse was loud in my ears. "You're going to hear something. Don't move when you do." The silence after that was unbearable. I kept straining to hear, and then, from somewhere behind me, a faint knock. 3 slow taps. On the wall. I told myself it was a neighbor. Thin walls. Nothing unusual. But then the knock came again, this time from the inside of the wall. The man's voice was still calm. "They know you can hear them now." I pressed pause. My apartment was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I didn't want to press play again. My hand was shaking, but I did. "It's almost time," the voice said. "Tomorrow you'll see it." I wanted to stop. I wanted to smash the tape. But something inside me needed to know how it ended. When the tape stops, you'll hear footsteps. Don't look toward the sound. Not yet. When you finally do, it will be standing where you are right now. I couldn't breathe. My throat felt dry. The hiss grew louder, filling the room, until I could barely make out his last words. The tape ends tomorrow. And then click. Silence. I sat there for a long time, staring at the player, waiting for something to happen. But the apartment stayed quiet. No knocks. No footsteps. Nothing. Eventually, I put the tape back in its case and shoved it into my desk drawer. I told myself I wouldn't touch it again. But I couldn't stop thinking about tomorrow. What did he mean? That would end tomorrow? That something would arrive? I barely slept. I kept the lights on, phone in hand, every creak of the building making me flinch. When the sun came up, I almost felt relieved. Morning made it easier to believe it had all been a weird, elaborate joke. I went through my day like normal. Work, grocery store, back home. As night fell, I kept glancing at the clock. My heart pounded harder the closer it got to midnight. At 11:58 p.m., I sat down in the same spot as the night before. I didn't play the tape. I just waited. At 12:03 a.m., I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. From somewhere in the hall. They stopped outside my door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then, the doorknob turned. The lock held, but the sound of it rattling in the dark sent a spike of ice through my chest. After a moment, the knob stilled. The footsteps moved away. I stayed there until the sun rose, every muscle aching from sitting so still. When I finally stood, my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. I went to the door. No marks. No signs anyone had been there. But on the floor was the tape. Not in its case. Just the tape itself, stretched out, the black ribbons spilling across the threshold like a vein. I didn't touch it. I don't think I ever will. Because the last thing I noticed, right before I shut the door, the ribbon wasn't loose. It was still turning. It was a little after 2 in the morning when the line lit up. Not unusual for a Friday night. By that hour, we usually had drunk drivers, bar fights, and the occasional domestic disturbance. I was halfway through my coffee, the burnt, metallic kind that had been sitting in the pot for hours, when I answered. 911, what's your emergency? I heard my own voice. Not like someone who kind of sounded like me. Not like a distant cousin or a bad impression. It was my voice exactly. Same tone, same cadence. Even the way I said emergency, how I dropped the side just slightly, it was there. Hello, it said. I froze. It's strange, you never think about what your own voice sounds like until you hear it. Even when you hear recordings, there's a difference. But this wasn't a recording. It was alive. Present. Who is this? I asked, keeping my voice steady. The voice paused. I think you know. A prickling sensation crawled up the back of my neck. I glanced at the other dispatchers, but they were busy. Monica was laughing quietly into her headset, probably talking down some drunk guy. Carl was leaning back in his chair, staring at his monitor. No one was listening to me. You've reached emergency services, I said, forcing my professional tone. If you have an emergency, I need you to. I am the emergency. The voice was quiet, but I heard it perfectly. And then, softer. I'm you. The real you. My mouth went dry. I pulled the headset away for a second, listening to the faint hum of the line, then put it back on. Okay, I said. What's going on? What's your location? There was a pause, and in that pause I could hear breathing. My breathing. Slow, measured, but in a rhythm I recognized as my own. You're in the wrong place, the voice said. That's not your desk. You're not supposed to be there. I am. I swiveled in my chair, scanning the room again. It was just the 4 of us on the overnight shift. Same as always. The glow of computer screens painted everyone's faces a pale blue. The AC kicked on somewhere in the ceiling. Normal. But my heart was pounding. This is some kind of prank, I said. If you don't have an actual emergency, I'll have to terminate the call. You can't hang up on yourself. The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. There was something about the way it said yourself. A strange mixture of certainty and pity, like it knew something I didn't. I'm going to ask again, I said. Where are you calling from? It chuckled. My chuckle. I swear to God, it was the same little throat laugh I give when I'm trying to downplay how nervous I am. I'm calling from your apartment, it said. That stopped me cold. I live alone. No one else has a key. You're lying. I said, but my voice cracked. Go ahead, it said casually. Ask me something only you'd know. I don't know why I played along. Maybe because I needed to disprove it. Maybe because deep down I thought, what if? What's the name of the girl I dated in high school? Junior year. You mean Amber? The one who wore the black choker with the little silver star? The one you said you could see yourself marrying, until you saw her holding hands with Tyler outside the gas station. My throat tightened. That's public info. Could have looked it up. Oh sure, it said lightly. Then how about this? You still have the letter she wrote you. The one with the purple pen. It's in a shoebox under your bed, wrapped in that old hoodie you never wear anymore. You kept it because you like the way it smells. Faint. Like her perfume. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Because that was true. Exactly true. Why are you calling me? I finally asked. To warn you, it said. The line felt heavier somehow, like the air between us had thickened. Warn me about what? It's not safe for you to stay there, it said. At the station. At home. Anywhere. You've been in the wrong timeline for a while now. You've been pretending to be me, but I'm coming back. You need to get ready. I wanted to hang up. I should have hung up. But instead, I asked, what do you mean, wrong timeline? You think your life is real because you can remember it, it said. But so can I. Which means one of us doesn't belong here. I've been somewhere else. Watching. Waiting. And now the cracks are opening. You've seen them, haven't you? I thought about the dream I'd had 2 nights ago. The one where I was sitting at my desk here at work. But when I looked at my monitor, it wasn't a map of the city. It was a video feed of my own bedroom. I was lying in bed, sleeping, but my chest wasn't moving. No breathing. I shook my head, forcing the memory away. If you keep calling, I'll have this number traced. You think you can trace yourself? The voice said, almost amused. Look outside. My chair squeaked as I turned toward the nearest window. We're on the 2nd floor, overlooking the mostly empty parking lot. A single street light flickered near the far curb. And there, in the yellow glow, was a figure, standing perfectly still. It wasn't far enough away for me to miss the details, but my brain didn't want to put them together. The figure was my height, my build, hands in pockets, same as me. Even the way it tilted its head to the side. It was like looking at a reflection that had stepped out of the glass. I dropped my gaze, heart hammering. You see me now, don't you? The voice whispered. I didn't answer. I'll be at your apartment when your shift ends, it said. We'll see which one of us stays. Then the line went dead. I sat there for a long moment, headset still pressed to my ear, the dial tone humming like a warning I didn't know how to read. When I finally pulled it off, my hand was shaking. I looked back at the window. The parking lot was empty, but I didn't hang up right away. I don't know why. Maybe part of me still thought this was some elaborate prank. But the line was dead silent for a moment. No breathing. No background noise. Just that hollow, open line, sound you only notice when the person on the other end is waiting for you to speak first. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. Who is this? The answer came fast, like they'd been leaning over the phone, ready to fire the words out the second I opened my mouth. I told you. I'm you. I let out a short, nervous laugh, mostly just to convince myself I wasn't already shaking. All right, buddy. I think you had your fun. Let's keep the lines open for real emergencies. But they didn't let me finish. You're not supposed to be here. The way they said it. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was just a fact. Flat. Plain. Like telling someone the sky was blue. I didn't respond right away. And in that pause, I heard something I shouldn't have. A chair creaking. Not over the phone, behind me. I spun in my seat, so fast my headset cord tugged against my neck. The dispatch room was exactly the way it had been for the last 6 hours. Empty. Just me. The dim hum of monitors, the blinking red and green status lights, and the single desk lamp casting that ugly yellow pool across my station. But it didn't feel empty. You know how a room has a weight when someone else is in it? Like your body just knows you're being watched? That weight was here now. I turned back to my screen, forcing a smirk into my voice. Yeah? Where's here exactly? The voice didn't miss a beat. I'm standing right behind you. I froze. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone. Identical to mine. Same slight rasp from too much coffee. Same low, even delivery I'd trained into myself, so panic callers would feel like I was in control. I wasn't in control now. I didn't want to turn around. My body felt like it had split into two arguments. My head screaming that it was empty, my spine crawling with the cold certainty that if I looked, I'd see something. So instead, I kept my eyes locked on the monitor. And I lied. No, you're not. Yes, I am. I heard the faint tap of fingers on a desk. The same desk I was sitting at. Why don't you turn around and check? I swallowed hard. My voice cracked. Just barely, but enough that I could hear it. How are you calling me if you're here? They didn't answer right away. I could hear the faintest hiss of air over the line, and it took me a second to realize it was the sound my own headset made when I wasn't talking. You picked up, they said finally. I told you. I'm the real one. You're not supposed to be here. My mouth went dry. Supposed to be where? In my seat. Something in me snapped thin. The dispatcher training. Maybe the instinct to keep control of a call, to steer it, to gather details. What's your name? I asked. The voice laughed, my laugh, low and humorless. You know my name? The air in the room felt heavy, like the temperature had dropped 5 degrees. My headset felt suddenly too tight, the ear cups pressing against my head like a clamp. Look, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. If this is some kind of stunt, I'm stunned. The word cut in sharply. You think this is a stunt? You think I'm pretending to be you? No, you're pretending to be me. I opened my mouth to argue, but the sound that came through the headset next stopped me cold. It was my own voice. Not talking, breathing. Slow, steady, but too close to the mic. And it wasn't coming from the phone speaker. It was coming from somewhere in the room. I yanked the headset off. The breathing stopped. The line was still open on the screen, the timer ticking up. 00:03:47. 00:03:48. I should have ended the call. That's what protocol says. But my hand wouldn't move. Instead, I reached for the small side mirror taped to my monitor, the one I used to see the back of the room without turning around. The reflection showed exactly what I already knew I'd see. Rows of empty chairs. The dark glass wall beyond. Nothing else. Except the farthest chair in the row, the one against the wall, was turned slightly toward me. I didn't remember it being like that. My headset beeped. The caller had unmuted themselves. You keep checking, the voice said. Like you think you'll catch me when you look. You won't. I'm not where you think I am. I clenched my jaw. Then where are you? There was a pause. And then, softly, I can see your hands. My fingers were resting on the desk, curled slightly toward the keyboard. I slid them under the desk out of instinct. I can still see them, they whispered. I don't remember standing up, but suddenly I was moving, yanking the headset cord from the jack, crossing the dispatch floor fast. My shoes echoed against the linoleum, loud in the empty room. The turned chair at the far end sat in shadow. I reached out and spun it toward me. Empty. I forced a laugh, shaky, too high in my throat. You're not here. You can't be here. The voice came from the headset, still lying on my desk 30 feet away. Yes, I can. You just don't see me the way I see you. Something slammed in the hallway beyond the glass wall, loud enough to make me flinch. I turned toward it, hard in my throat. That hallway was supposed to be empty. The building was locked after hours. My desk phone lit up again, the same incoming number. Only this time, the caller ID wasn't blank. It said dispatch me. I stared at it for too long. The phone kept ringing, and then stopped. I let out a shaky breath and froze when I heard the click of a receiver being picked up. You shouldn't have left your seat, the voice said. Not over the headset, not over the phone, from the doorway behind me. It's strange how quickly the night can start to rot. At first, it's just a few sour minutes, a call that lingers in your head, a voice that feels wrong. But if you leave it long enough, if you keep answering the phone, it spreads. It seeps into you. And by the time you realize something's off, it's too late to scrape it out. After the night with the other me, I should have taken a day off. Hell, a week. But this job isn't one you just abandon. We're short-staffed as it is. My supervisor told me, if you can handle it, we need you in. And I said yes. I told myself I wasn't afraid, that the voice on the line was just some prank, a freak imitation. But I was lying. And when the phone rang at 1:12 a.m., I felt my stomach drop before I even answered. 911, what's your emergency? At first, there was nothing, just that low, humming silence, The kind you hear when you're alone in a big room and the air feels heavy. Then a voice. Not mine. Not exactly. It was a woman's voice. Trembling. He's in my house. It jolted me back into focus. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. What's your address? The stairs, she whispered. He's on the stairs. I tapped my keyboard, pulling up the location data. No name on file. Just a set of coordinates in a rural area. The signal was weak, flickering. Lock yourself in a room, I told her. Stay on the line with me until... And then another voice cut in. Not hers. Not mine. It was me. But not the me I'm used to hearing in my head. It was the other one. The one from the first night. She can't lock the door, it said. Calm. Amused. It doesn't latch. I froze. Who is this? I asked, my own voice shaking just enough to betray me. The woman's voice came back, frantic. Please, he's coming. Then the other one again, so close in the audio it felt like it was speaking into my ear. You're not fast enough. I muted my mic, ripped my headset halfway off, and stared at the phone display. Only one incoming call. No merge. No conference. Yet there were two voices. When I unmuted, it was chaos. The woman was screaming. The other me was laughing. I could hear footsteps. But the strange part, the footsteps weren't just in her background. They were in mine too. Right there, in the room with me. I spun in my chair, scanning the dim rows of cubicles, the green glow of status lights on monitors, the empty, rolling chairs. The dispatch floor was dead quiet except for the sound of my headset. Then the call dropped. Just like that. No line-ended tone, no click. Just silence. I sat there breathing hard, telling myself it was a technical issue. Some freak interference. But when the next call came in, 37 seconds later, I knew it wasn't. 911, I said, voice thin. What's your emergency? This time, it was a man. His voice was panicked, ragged. There's blood all over my kitchen floor. I don't know whose it is. Sir, are you injured? I don't think so. But it's dripping. From the ceiling. I was about to ask for his location when something else slid into the call. Not a click, not a beep, just a sudden doubling of sound. It was the woman from before. He's on the stairs, she whispered again. I felt my throat tighten. Sir, is there anyone else in your house? I live alone, he said. But now her breathing was there, rapid and shallow, as if she were crouched just inches from the receiver. Then the other me joined in. 3 voices on one line. You shouldn't be here, it said. Not to them, to me. And then, I swear to God, all 3 of them started talking over each other. Not in turn, not even acknowledging the others. The woman was whispering about stairs. The man was shouting about the blood. The other me was telling me to hang up. But the sound wasn't layered like normal voices on a conference call. It was blended, like the words were slipping into each other, syllables meshing, pitches twisting. It was almost impossible to separate them. And then it got worse. They started changing. The woman's voice stretched into a low growl mid-sentence. The man's pitch wavered up and down like he was speaking through a warped cassette. My double's voice cracked like the sound of paper tearing, but inside my own head. And underneath all of it, I began to hear something else. A hum. No, not a hum, a tone. Low, steady, almost below hearing. I felt it in my jaw before I realized it was there. It made my teeth ache. The words were bleeding together so badly now that they stopped making sense. A string of noises, groans, half-formed words. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. No voices. No hum. Just the dial tone. I sat there staring at my console, my pulse thudding in my ears. My shift still had 4 hours left. The next 2 calls came in clean. Normal. And then, 2:46 a.m. A call from an unknown number. When I answered, I heard my own voice, my real voice recorded. The exact words I'd said to the woman on the first call. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. What's your address? Then her response. The stairs. He's on the stairs. Then the other me. She can't lock the door. It was playing back the conversation. Exactly as it happened. Except after that line, it kept going. The real call had dropped. I never heard what came next. In this version, there's a faint sound, creaking wood, slow, deliberate. The woman sobbing, whispering, please don't. And my other voice, close, cold, She's not even here anymore. The line went dead. I sat frozen, headset still on, my reflection faint in the black monitor across from me. My eyes looked tired, older, and, in the reflection, I thought I saw someone standing behind me. I didn't turn around right away. I don't know if it was fear or denial, but I sat there listening for movement. My breathing was shallow, my ears straining. Nothing. When I finally spun my chair, the row behind me was empty. Just the same humming computers, the same half-lit exit sign. But when I looked back at my screen, there was a new incoming call. No number, no ID. The moment I answered, the hum was back. That low, vibrating tone that made my molars ache. Then the voices came, all of them at once. The woman, the man, the other me, and more. Children giggling, someone sobbing. A deep, guttural sound that might have been breathing but didn't feel human. It was like every call I'd ever taken was leaking into this one, mixing together into a single, impossible conversation. And then I heard my own name, spoken in my exact voice. "You're not supposed to be here, Alex." My blood ran cold. I never told the first call on my name. We don't give that out. The chorus of voices began to repeat it, each in a different tone, pitch, and speed. Sometimes slow, like a whisper through water. Sometimes fast, like an insect buzz. "Hey, Alex. ALX. Alex." I yanked the headset off, tossed it onto the desk, and stood up so fast my chair rolled into the next station. But the sound didn't stop. It was still there. Not through the headset. In the room. I could hear them murmuring my name from somewhere in the shadows of the dispatch floor. I backed toward the supervisor's office, but when I got to the door, the window was dark. No one inside. And in the reflection of that glass, I saw movement. Something shifting between the rows of empty chairs. The voices grew softer then, almost gentle, and all at once, they said the same thing, perfectly in sync. "Answer the next one." The phone on my desk started to ring, and I didn't realize how long I'd been staring at the red glow of the clock until my eyes started to burn. 3:12 a.m. It felt like it had been 3:12 a.m. for an hour. The room was too quiet for a dispatch center. No phones ringing. No muffled voices from the other operators. Even the low hum from the ceiling vents seemed to have faded into some deeper silence. I sat there with the headset crooked against my ear, my hand still resting on the keyboard, frozen like I was afraid any movement would wake something up. It had been quiet for maybe 30 seconds when the voice came through. Not a ring, not a beep, just it was suddenly there. "You're still here?" I jerked back so fast my headset slipped off my ear. I know that voice anywhere. Because it was mine. Not just the tone, not just the cadence. It had the same little rasp in the back of the throat I'd always hated in recordings of myself. The same slightly breathless way I talked when I'd been sitting still too long. "Who is this?" My voice was shaking when I asked it. "You know who this is." The other me almost sounded amused. "You're not supposed to be here." I looked toward the other end of the room, half expecting someone to be standing there holding a radio or a spare headset. Nothing. Just empty chairs. "This isn't your shift," the voice continued, slow, deliberate. "You came in on the wrong one." I tried to force my voice steady. "This is my shift. Tuesday night, 11 to 7. I've worked it for 3 years." "No," the voice said. "That's not what I mean." I could feel something crawling into my head through the line. Not a sound exactly, but a weight. Like the air in the room was being pulled through my ears into some other space. "You're in the wrong timeline." It said it like it was giving me a fact I should have known already. "Your shift isn't here. Not in this one." I swallowed. "What are you talking about?" There was a pause. Then I heard another sound under my voice, something faint, almost like papers shuffling, or maybe just breathing. "You're somewhere you don't belong," it said. "And they don't like it." My hands felt clammy on the desk. "Who's that?" The line crackled. For a second, it sounded like it was picking up every frequency in the world. 100 voices, whispers, laughter, crying, all faint, all bleeding over each other. Then they snapped away, and it was just me again. "You have to leave before they get here," the voice said. Then, softer, almost like it was right in the room. "You have to go before I do." I stood up without realizing it, looking around. I don't know what I thought I'd see. Maybe myself, standing in the shadows, holding a phone. But there was nothing, just the empty dispatch floor. I yanked the headset off, but the voice didn't stop. It was still in my ear. Even with the headset dangling at my side, it sounded like it was pressed against me. You think you stayed late? But it's been years. My chest tightened. What? In your shift, the voice said, it's not 3:12 a.m. It's morning. The sun is up. You're supposed to be there. Not here. My throat went dry. I tried to remember getting here tonight. Unlocking the doors. Sitting down. I could remember all of it. But when I tried to remember what day it felt slippery, like trying to grab fog. This room, the voice continued, isn't your room anymore. It looks the same, but it's not. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the walls, the desks, the soft blue glow of the monitors. It was the same place I've been every night for years. But I guess it didn't feel the same. Something in the shadows felt stretched, like they were pulled thin over something else. Where am I? I whispered. You're in a version of the shift where you didn't leave. The other me spoke calmly, almost gently. You stayed in this chair. You stayed so long the clocks stopped working. So long the phones stopped ringing. So long they found you. The air felt heavier with every word. They don't let you leave once they find you. I forced a laugh, but it came out too thin. This is just some sick joke, right? Someone's patching an audio, messing with me. You're not listening. The voice got sharper, more impatient. I'm telling you how to get out. Before you're here for good. I swallowed hard. Then tell me how. You have to go back, it said. Back to where you came in. Back to your real shift. Walk out of this room, through the door. Don't stop until you feel the air change. Something about feel the air change made my skin crawl. Why me? I asked. Why would I? How would I even? You were already close, it interrupted. Close to falling into this one. All it takes is a few seconds of forgetting. A few seconds where you don't know if it's Tuesday or Thursday. If it's this year or the last. That's when you slip. The line went quiet for a beat. Then the other me said, they're here. A sound broke through the silence, faint from somewhere in the room behind me, like feet dragging over the floor. I spun around, but nothing moved in the dim glow. There in the corners, the voice said, don't look too long. Something shifted in the far corner by the supply closet. Not movement exactly, but an absence. A patch of space where the shadows seemed too thick. They're not made to be seen, the voice said. They only notice you if you notice them. So don't. I kept my eyes straight ahead, even though every part of me wanted to glance toward that corner. My legs felt locked, but I forced them to move. Go to the door, the voice instructed. I walked fast, but the room felt longer than it should have been. Like every step stretched the floor farther away. Behind me, something whispered. Not words, just a dry, rasping sound like paper tearing slowly. It was coming closer. Don't turn around, the other me said. If you turn around, you stay. The door was just ahead now. I reached for the handle and stopped. What happens if I stay? I asked. For a moment, the voice didn't answer. Then it said, then one day, a voice will call you and tell you you're in the wrong shift, and you'll try to leave, but you won't remember where the door is anymore. The handle felt ice cold in my hand. I pulled. The air beyond the door felt different, lighter somehow. The heaviness in my chest loosened just a little. You're almost back, the voice said. Just keep walking. Don't look for me. Don't look for them. I stepped through, not letting myself stop. The hallway was dim, humming faintly with the sound of the vending machine at the far end. I walked toward it, breathing hard, my heart still pounding. When I turned the corner into the stairwell, the phone on my desk started ringing behind me. Just one ring. But it was my ring, the specific double beep of my headset. I didn't answer. I didn't go back. But when I stepped outside into the cold night air, I realized I didn't remember driving here tonight. And when I checked the time on my phone, it wasn't 3:12 a.m. It was 3:12 a.m. yesterday that I don't remember standing up from the chair. I don't remember pushing it back, or shutting down the monitor, or even looking at the clock. But I remember the room. The way it looked in that moment will never leave me. Dispatch after a night shift always feels hollow. The phones stop ringing, the hum of voices fades, and all that's left is the buzz from the fluorescent lights overhead. The kind of hum you don't notice until you're alone. That morning was like that, only worse. The air felt thick, as if the sound itself was pressing against my skin. I just logged out, or at least I thought I had. My headset was unplugged, the mic swinging gently from where it hung on the desk. My screen was black. The console lights were dimmed. And yet, there was talking. Not from the hallway. Not from the radio. From the console. At first, it was faint, like the memory of a voice rather than the real thing. I actually thought my mind was doing that thing it sometimes does after a long shift, when you keep hearing phantom rings or snatches of conversations in your head. But this was clearer. So clear that my brain froze halfway through deciding to ignore it. It was me. My voice. I was talking. My own tone. My own clipped words. Okay, ma'am, slow down. What's your location? I can't explain the cold that washed through me. It wasn't fear right away. It was that weird, dizzying disconnection, like when you accidentally hear a recording of yourself and don't realize it's you at first. Only this wasn't a recording. I'd never had that call. I was certain of it. I stepped closer to the console. The display was still dark, but the headset light was on. I hadn't noticed it before. I leaned in. The voice kept going, calm and professional. My dispatcher voice, but something about the rhythm was wrong. There were pauses that didn't belong. Like the me on the headset was looking at something, thinking about something else. And the caller's voice, it was faint, but I could hear it. Or maybe hear isn't right. I could feel it, like it was coming through the floorboards instead of the line. A low, breathless murmur. I couldn't make out the words. The me on the line repeated something the caller must have said. She's in a room with you. My stomach turned. Another pause. Then don't move. I backed away from the desk without meaning to. My own chair creaked, the sound far too loud in the empty room. The me on the line stopped talking. And then I heard it, clear, sharp, cutting through the static like someone leaning close to a mic. I told you, you're not supposed to be here. I froze. I'd heard that before. The imposter. I thought I'd ended that I'd walked out of the shift and left it behind. But now my own voice was carrying its words. I reached for the headset. My fingers hovered just above the foam ear pad. The line went quiet. Not like a hang-up, more like someone had pressed a hand over the mic. I couldn't hear breathing, couldn't hear background noise, just a complete absence of sound. Then the faintest tap, like a fingernail against the desk. Then another. Then a slow, steady series of taps, almost in time with my heartbeat. And then, look, my head turned before I could stop it. Across the room, by the second console, the chair was pulled out. The monitor was glowing faint blue, though I knew for a fact no one had used it since the start of my shift. The headset, there was hanging slightly off the hook. I swear it was swaying. I walked toward it, every step heavy. My shoes barely made sound on the carpet. As I got closer, the sound in the headset grew. Not words, just that low, murmuring static like breath underwater. I glanced at the screen. There was no active call, no logged incident. The system said idle. But the moment my eyes met that green idle indicator, the voice snapped through, sharp as glass. In the shift. I jumped back, hitting my hip on the desk. My pulse was racing. Every part of me wanted to just leave. Grab my bag, get to my car, forget this ever happened. But I didn't move, because the static wasn't just in the headset anymore. It was filling the room. It was in the hum of the lights, the faint whir of the air vents, the low vibration in my chest. And then, the other console joined in. My voice again, talking over itself, overlapping, lines bleeding together just like before. But there weren't two voices now. There were 3, 4, maybe more. All of them were me. Some calm, some whispering, some almost screaming, but muffled, like they had a hand over their own mouths. And between all of them, a single, steady sentence kept cutting through. You're in the wrong place. You're in the wrong place. You're in the wrong place. I backed toward the door. My hand found the handle. It was cold. I pulled. Nothing. It didn't budge. I twisted the lock. The bolt clicked, but the door still wouldn't open. The voices grew louder. My name was in there now, tangled in the chaos. Over and over, different tones, different paces, sometimes urgent, sometimes almost pleading. I slammed my fist against the door. Stop! The room went silent. Every voice stopped at the exact same moment. And then, one more time, in perfect unison. In the shift, the lights flickered, and for just a second, in the black between flickers, I saw it. Me, sitting in my own chair, my own console. Headset on, watching me. The lights came back, and the chair was empty. I ran. I didn't think about the fact the door had just opened easily under my hand. I didn't think about the way the hallway seemed darker than it should have been. I just kept moving. By the time I hit the parking lot, the sun was up. It felt wrong. Too bright, too quiet. I didn't look back at the building. I got in my car, turned the key, and drove. For the first 10 minutes, I didn't even turn on the radio. I just listened to my own breathing, tried to convince myself I'd imagined it. That maybe I'd nodded off at the console. That maybe none of it had been real. But as I hit the highway, I realized something. I could still hear it. Faint under the sound of the tires on the road. My own voice, somewhere far away, calm and professional. 911, what's your emergency? And then, after a pause, as if answering a caller I couldn't hear. She's right here. She hasn't left yet. I remember the call because it started out so normal. Normal for my job. Anyway, it was about 1:42 in the morning when the line lit up red, cutting through the dull hum of the dispatch center. I've been staring at the clock for a while, waiting for the end of my shift, sipping on a cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm an hour ago. It was one of those nights where the air in the room felt heavier than usual. Quiet, but not peaceful. I tapped the headset. 911, what's your emergency? A man's voice came through, shaky but controlled, like he was trying to keep it together. Yeah, there's a fire. I think my neighbor's house is on fire. I went into autopilot. What's the address, sir? 48 Linden Street, he said without hesitation. I typed it in, confirming the location on the map. All right, tell me exactly what you see. He exhaled sharply, like smoke was already in his lungs. The roof, there's smoke pouring out, and the lights inside, they're still on. I don't think anyone's noticed yet. It's getting worse. I kept him talking as I dispatched a unit. He mentioned hearing crackling sounds, smelling something like burnt plastic. His breathing quickened when I asked if he could see anyone inside. No, I can't. Should I knock? Should I? No, sir. Stay where you are. Fire crews are on their way. We stayed on the line for another minute before he hung up. By then, help was already en route. It was all standard procedure. And yet, something about his voice stayed with me. I glanced at the clock again, 1:47. My shift had just over an hour left. I leaned back, stretched, rubbed my temples, and tried not to think about how badly I want to go home. 15 minutes later, exactly 15, the line lit up red again. I tapped the headset, expecting another call, maybe something unrelated. 911, what's your emergency? There was a pause on the other end. Then the same voice. There's a fire. I think my neighbor's house is on fire. I froze. It wasn't just the same man. It was the same tone, the same hesitant urgency, the same exact first sentence. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What's the address, sir? 48 Linden Street. My chest tightened. It wasn't just similar. It was identical. I don't mean similar phrasing. I mean word for word. The way his breath caught in the middle of neighbors, the tiny quiver in his voice. It was like a recording. I went through the same questions, trying to change the order this time, but he answered exactly as before. Smoke from the roof. Lights still on. Crackling sounds. Burnt plastic. When I asked if he could see anyone inside, he said the exact same thing. No, I can't. Should I knock? Should I? No, sir. Stay where you are. I repeated, almost whispering. The déjà vu was so strong my hands started to sweat. The line went dead. I stared at the call log, my stomach turning. The first call had already been handled. Units dispatched, situation under control. This second one shouldn't even exist. I checked the timestamp. 2:02 a.m., exactly 15 minutes after the first. I told myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe the guy called again because he thought no one had shown up yet. But I've been doing this job for years. People don't repeat themselves word for word on a second call. They're agitated, they change details, they ask questions. This was impossible. I didn't tell anyone right away. I just tried to shake it off, force myself to keep working. But my eyes kept darting to the clock, my ears straining for the next ring. It came again. 2:17 a.m. 15 minutes later. The red light blinked. My mouth went dry. I tapped the headset, barely able to say the words. 911. What's your emergency? Silence for a second. Then, yeah, there's a fire. I think my neighbor's house is on fire. It was him. Again. Same voice. Same cadence. Same everything. By now, I knew every word before he spoke it. What's the address, sir? 48 Linden Street. Tell me exactly what you see. The roof. There's smoke pouring out, and the lights inside, they're still on. I don't think anyone's noticed yet. It's getting worse. I could hear my own breathing over his. I didn't dispatch anyone this time. I just listened, my stomach twisting as he went through the same script. When he hung up, I just sat there, staring at the empty room beyond my monitor. 3 calls. Same person. Same emergency. Same 15-minute gap. The fire was real. I'd already confirmed that. But it wasn't possible for the same call to repeat like this. Not exactly. I finally flagged down Marcus, one of the night supervisors. Told him we'd had duplicate calls. He leaned over my screen, scrolling through the log. Looks like the first 2 were from different numbers, he said. Similar area code, but not the same phone. Different numbers? I asked, but it's the same voice. He shrugged. Could be someone copying the first caller. Or maybe you're just tired. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But when the next call came in at 2:32 a.m., 15 minutes later, Marcus was standing right beside me. And when a man said, there's a fire, I think my neighbor's house is on fire, I saw Marcus's face drain of color. He didn't say a word while I went through the motions. When it ended, he muttered, log it. I'll check something. Then he walked off, leaving me alone again. The calls didn't stop. Every 15 minutes. Like clockwork. 2:47, 3:02, 3:17. Each one exactly the same. It was like the night had gotten stuck, looping over and over, but only for this one moment. I stopped answering after the 6th repeat. I just watched the red light blink until it went dark again, my hands pressed into my knees, trying to convince myself it wasn't real. But even when I didn't answer, the calls came. Over and over. At 3:32, I gave in and picked up again. This time, there was nothing. No voice. Just faint static, like the sound you hear when you hold a seashell to your ear. I said hello. The static deepened, low and steady. Then, I heard myself. Not the man's voice. Mine. Repeating the words I'd said during the very first call. 911. What's your emergency? My own voice echoed back at me, tinny and distant, like it had been pulled from a recording. I sat there, listening to myself talk to him. 15 minutes ago, an hour ago, I couldn't tell anymore. When the line went dead, the clock on my screen still said 3:32. It stayed that way for a long time. Too long that I thought maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe the guy from the fire call just had some kind of breakdown. A déjà vu moment that spilled over the line. That's the easy explanation my brain was trying to grab onto, like someone dangling a rope over a cliff. 15 minutes apart. Same words. Same cough in the background. Same little pop of static before his voice cracked. I told myself maybe he'd called back, forgot he called the first time, and just repeated himself. But when I checked the call log, it wasn't a callback. It was 2 different entries. 2 separate incoming calls. That's what stuck with me. That's what made me watch the little red blinking light on the console more closely for the rest of the shift. The next call came in about an hour later. This one wasn't about a fire. It was a domestic disturbance. A man's voice, low and tense. You could hear the way he was holding his breath between sentences, like he was listening for something in the room with him. My wife's. She's in the kitchen with a knife, he said. The sound of footsteps. The faint scrape of metal on tile. I think she's going to hurt herself. Or me. I kept my voice calm, steady, the way they train us. I told him to leave the house if he could, get to a safe distance, and I'd send units. But he wouldn't stop talking. It was like he had a script in his head and couldn't deviate. She's humming that song again, he whispered. And in the background, yeah, I heard it. Soft, tuneless, a kind of low, broken humming. I sent the patrol car. The call ended. Exactly 42 minutes later, the same call lit up my screen. Same number. Same exact sequence of words. Same footsteps. Same scrape. Same off-key humming. Even his breathing matched. I didn't interrupt him the second time. I just sat there, listening, trying to hear any small difference, any detail that could prove this was just a coincidence. But there wasn't one. It was a recording. Had to be. Except it wasn't in the system as a recording. It was logged as a live call. And when I tried to trace it, the location was blank. You don't get blank in our system. You get coordinates, an address, a cell tower, something. This was nothing. By that point, my stomach felt like I'd swallowed ice water. You can tell yourself you're fine. You're just tired. The shift's been long. But your body knows before your mind does when something isn't right. And mine knew. The rest of the shift, I kept waiting for it to happen again. I started jotting down times, call IDs, anything that might help me compare later. Not because I thought I'd figure it out, but because I wanted proof that it was real when I woke up tomorrow and started convincing myself it wasn't. The third one hit just after 3 a.m. An old woman calling about a man in her yard. Her voice trembled like she was shivering. I remember the way she said the word, watching, long, drawn out, like she was afraid if she said it too quickly it would make it true. He's just standing there. By the fence, she whispered. I can see his breath, but his mouth isn't moving. That line stayed with me. I tried to get more detail, but she kept repeating herself. About the fence, about the breath, about his mouth not moving. Units were dispatched. Call ended. 33 minutes later, same woman. Same words. The same tiny gasp halfway through her sentence. The same faint hum of her refrigerator in the background. I wrote it down. Time. Duration. Notes. I felt like if I stopped keeping track, I'd lose my grip on it, and the night would just swallow the whole thing like it had never happened. By the time the fourth repeat happened, I wasn't even shocked. It was an assault report this time. A guy who'd been jumped in a parking lot. I heard his voice crack when he said he thought they broke his ribs. 24 minutes later, he called again. Or didn't. I can't explain what it feels like to hear something twice that should only exist once. It's not like déjà vu. That's a trick your brain plays. This was external, real, and I was just a witness. After the first few repeats, the silence between calls felt heavier, like the room itself was waiting. Even the other dispatchers seemed quieter. Or maybe that was just me, stuck in my own head. The only other person in my row that night was Carter, 2 consoles over. Big guy. Jokes too much. I thought about telling him, but what would I even say? Hey, have you ever had the same call twice? Like exactly the same? He'd just laugh and say, welcome to night shift. So I kept my mouth shut, and I kept listening. The weirdest part wasn't the repetition. It was the way the second calls always came in after slightly different intervals. 15 minutes, 42, 33, 24. But the calls themselves were exactly identical. Down to the half second. A real person can't recreate their words like that. Even if they tried, they'd breathe differently. They'd pause in different places. They'd shift in their chair, or swallow, or sniff. These didn't. After the 5th repeat, I started to feel like something was watching the room. I don't mean a person. I mean the air, the static in the headsets, the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Like all of it was aware of me now. I kept catching myself glancing at the digital clock on the wall, half expecting to see something wrong with it. The seconds ticked like normal. Nothing strange there. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized all these repeats, they weren't just random. They were creeping closer together. By 4:15 a.m., the gap between a call and its repeat was down to 19 minutes. I remember leaning back in my chair, stretching, and hearing the faint sound of typing from somewhere behind me. When I turned, the row was empty. Carter was gone. No one else was there. The typing didn't stop. It was steady, patient, like someone filling out a report. But the sound wasn't coming from any direction I could pinpoint. It was just there, hanging in the air, woven into the hum of the equipment. I tried to focus on my console, on the reports I still had to finish. But my ears were locked on that sound. When it finally stopped, the silence felt even worse. The next call that came in, I knew what was about to happen before I even answered. A woman reporting a missing child. Her voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. Every few seconds, she'd call out a name, Eli, and I could hear her footsteps crunching over gravel. I sent officers. She thanked me. Call ended. 16 minutes later, she called again. Same desperation. Same crunch of gravel. Same echo of her own voice calling the boy's name into the night. That's when it hit me. None of the officers ever radioed back about these repeats. They responded to the first calls, but the second ones? It was like they didn't exist. I checked the system. Every second call was there in the log, but the dispatch record was blank. No units sent. No notes. Just a call that came in, was answered, and ended. I felt my skin crawl as I scrolled through them, one after the other. Fire. Domestic. Trespass. Assault. Missing child. All doubled. All hollow. When the next call came, I didn't even speak. I just listened. It was the man from the very first fire call. Word for word. And this time, I mouthed the sentences along with him, matching each syllable as he said them. When the line went dead, I realized my hand was shaking. And then, my headset crackled. Not with another call. Just breathing. Slow. Steady. Not mine. And then, faintly, a voice. My voice. Next call coming in. I didn't say it. I swear to God I didn't. But in that empty, humming room, it sounded exactly like me. I don't know how long I sat there before I noticed. The first thing was the quiet. Not silence. Not really. There was still the low hum of the monitors, the faint buzz of the fluorescent light over my head, the ticking of the wall clock. Or what I thought was ticking. It wasn't. The second thing was the feeling like someone had taken the world and held it still. A thickness in the air, almost syrupy, like it clung to your skin. Breathing felt heavier, slower. I looked up at the clock. 3:07 a.m. The minute hand was exactly between the 7 and the 8, and the second hand was pointing just past the 2, like it had been caught mid-step. But it wasn't moving. I thought maybe the battery had died. It happens. But then I turned my head and saw the other wall clock, the one above the exit door. 3:07 a.m. Exactly the same. Same frozen second. Same stillness. I checked my watch. 3:07. It should have bothered me right then, but it didn't hit me yet. My brain just kind of shrugged. Weird coincidence. That's what I told myself. Until the phone rang again. Same shrill tone. Same urgent light flashing. I grabbed the headset. 911. What's your emergency? A man's voice. Panicked. Shaking. There's a guy in my backyard. He's just standing there. He's, oh my God. The words were the same. Not just the same meaning. The same. Every pause. Every shaky inhale. I knew the call. I'd taken already. I didn't even have to respond. I could have recited it with him like a bad movie I'd watched too many times. In the background, a dog barked. 3 times. Then a sharp metallic clang, like something hitting the chain-link fence. I'd heard that clang already. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to him beg me to send someone. And all I could think was, I've been here. Not just déjà vu is soft, like a dream brushing against your memory. This was hard, exact, the same, word for word. I let him finish just to see if anything changed. It didn't. I hung up and looked at the call log on my screen. Both calls, this one and the one earlier, were marked as coming in at 3:07 a.m. That wasn't possible. I've been sitting here for, what, 20 minutes? 30? Long enough to take the first call, write it up, clear the channel, and stare at the damn clock for a while. But in the system, there was no earlier. Both were now. I started scanning through the logs. My hands felt shaky, like they didn't want to work right. Every call from tonight, was marked 3:07 a.m. The fire call from before. The second fire call. The domestic dispute. The screaming kid. Every one of them. Same timestamp. Same frozen moment. I leaned back in my chair. The air felt heavier now. I could hear my own heartbeat. That's when I noticed the other dispatchers. Or the lack of them. We'd had a full crew at the start of my shift. 4 other people in here with me, plus the supervisor. Phones ringing, keyboards clacking, the low rumble of voices relaying information to units out in the field. Now, the chairs were still here. Papers on the desks. Half-drunk cups of coffee. One headset still swinging slowly from the edge of a desk, like someone had just been there. But no people. It wasn't like they'd all stood up and left together. There was no sign of movement. Just gone. Like the space between 2 blinks. I don't remember standing up, but suddenly I was on my feet, headset dangling from my hand. I looked toward the glass window at the front of the room, the one that looked into the hallway outside. No movement, No sound. The hallway lights were still on, but there was this strange quality to them, like they weren't really lighting anything. Just a glow with no heat. The phone rang again. I jumped. My heart actually hurt in my chest. I didn't want to answer it. I didn't want to hear the same voice again. It rang, and rang, and rang. Finally, I picked it up, my voice breaking. 911. What's your emergency? A woman's voice this time. Breathless, crying. Please, there's someone in my house. He's at the end of the hallway. He's not moving. He's just standing there. I knew this one too. She would describe his height next. 6 feet, wearing something dark. Then she'd say his face was wrong. And she did. Every word matched the call I'd taken an hour ago. Except there was no hour ago. I checked the log. 3:07 a.m. I didn't even bother finishing the call. I set the headset down on the desk, but her voice kept coming through, tiny and tinny through the earpiece. He's moving, he's... I pulled the cord from the jack. The voice stopped instantly, like cutting a thread. The silence that followed was worse. I turned toward the clock again. Still 3:07. Still frozen. I felt my chest getting tighter. My mind was trying to do the math, to find a reason, but there was no equation for this. I walked to the break room. The lights buzzed overhead, the same constant tone. The vending machine's little LED display read 3:07 instead of the usual numbers. I didn't even know it could show that. My reflection in the break room window looked off, like I was standing too close to the glass. My skin was pale under the flickering light. My eyes looked darker, like the pupils had spread wider than they should. I stared for too long, and the reflection's lips twitched. I stepped back so fast I hit the counter behind me. The air in the room was thick enough to taste. And then, the phone rang again. Not in here. Back in the main room. I froze. I didn't want to answer it. I didn't want to be in there at all. But the sound drilled into my skull, each ring sharper than the last. I walked back slow. The room felt bigger than before, like the walls had stretched. The caller ID didn't show a number. Just 3:07 a.m. in all caps. I picked it up with a shaking hand. At first, nothing. Just a low hiss of static. Then, my own voice. 911. What's your emergency? Not now me. Earlier me. The same tone, the same pitch. It was the first fire call. Word for word. Except this time, there was no one on the other end. It was just me, talking to no one. My skin crawled. I slammed the phone back into its cradle, but my voice kept going. From the headset, from the speakers, from somewhere in the walls. Sir, I need you to stay calm, sir. I ripped the headset cord out again. It didn't stop. It was like the room was remembering for me. I backed into the far corner, my hands over my ears. But I could still hear it. I could hear all of them. Every call, every scream, every metallic clang, every bark, every whispered plea, layered over each other until it was just noise. And under all, one sound didn't belong. A slow, wet breathing. Not through the phone. Here, in the room. I dropped my hands. I didn't turn around. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the frozen clock. 3:07 a.m. It never changed. And the calls never stopped. I thought it would stop after the clocks. I thought maybe whatever this was would just fade, like a bad storm rolling off. But it didn't. It only shifted. That night, I sat there in my station, still watching the unmoving hands of the wall clock. 3:07 a.m., frozen in place, mocking me. I had stopped checking my watch. What was the point? Time had been swallowed whole. And yet, the calls kept coming. I didn't even hear the first ring of the next one. It was just there in my headset, like it had bypassed the phone system entirely and slid right into my ear. My house is on fire. The words hit me so hard I almost pulled the headset off. It was a fire call, the exact same one from before. I knew every detail of that call now. The man's tone, flat, urgent, controlled. The faint sound of something crackling behind him, but not close. The slight breath he took before giving his address. And that's exactly what I heard again. Every word, every breath, even the strange pop in the background before he said, "Please send someone." It was perfect, like I was listening to a recording. Except this wasn't playing through the system archives. This was live, or it pretended to be. I answered anyway. "Sir, this is dispatch." And the same voice, in the same rhythm, said it all again. "My house is on fire. I froze, my throat dry. I don't know why I stayed on the line. Maybe I thought if I didn't interrupt him, I could catch something off. Something that would prove this was just a glitch. But there was nothing. Just the same script. And then, the call ended. Not with a click. Not with the normal silence. It cut. Like someone yanked the cord out of reality. The ringing came again immediately. I answered without thinking. Same voice. Same words. I felt my chest tightening. It was looping, but not in the normal way. This wasn't a recording on repeat. It was like the man was actually calling again, over and over, trapped in the same moment, delivering the same desperate lines, never realizing he'd done it before. I let it play 3 more times before my hand started shaking too hard to hold the mic button. I pulled the headset off, and still, I swear I could hear it. Faint, muffled, bleeding through the plastic. My house is on fire. I pressed the ear cups down on the desk, hard, and turned away. Across the room, Jen was staring at me. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to, because I could see in her face that she was hearing her version of it too. We didn't talk. We didn't compare notes. We just sat there, surrounded by calls that didn't belong to this hour, or this day, or maybe even this world anymore. I lasted maybe another 20 minutes before I picked the headset back up. The screen was dark. The call log was empty. But when I pressed the mic button, the voice was already there. And this time, it wasn't the same. My house is on fire, he started, but the words cracked halfway through. Not like static, like pain. It was him, but strained, high and raw. I almost didn't recognize it. And then I realized why. The original call, the one I'd first taken, had been calm, desperate but controlled. Now his voice was breaking, and then he was screaming. It wasn't a shout for help. It wasn't instructions. It was full gut-deep agony, like something was happening to him in that moment, and I was stuck listening to it in real time. My body went cold all over. The background sounds had changed too. I could hear the fire now, not faint and far away. It was roaring, eating through something big, the kind of sound you feel in your ribs. There was glass shattering, something falling, and over it all, the man screaming. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know whether to talk to him, or hang up, but it didn't matter. The call ended in that same sudden cut, like someone had ripped it out of the air. I stared at the dead headset in my hands. For a second, I thought about throwing it. Then it rang again. I didn't answer. It rang and rang until the sound felt like it was behind my eyes. I pressed it to my ear without even realizing. My house is on fire. Same man, same voice, same screaming. Except this time, it was even louder. There was a strange wetness in the sound, too. A gargled edge, like his throat was closing. I heard him cough, and it was awful, deep, rattling, pulling for air that wasn't there. I wanted to shout, to tell him to get out, to ask him where he was now, if he was still alive, but it wouldn't matter. I knew he couldn't hear me. Or worse, he could, but it wouldn't change anything. Because whatever was happening to him wasn't happening now. It had already happened. I was just stuck with the echo of it. By the 5th loop, I started hearing things in the background that didn't belong to a fire. At first, I thought it was just my brain trying to find patterns in the noise. But no, there were voices. Not his. Not anyone in the room with him. They were low, almost a whisper. And they weren't speaking words I knew. They had a strange rhythm, like chanting, but it wasn't human. The sounds were too sharp, too dry. I wanted to believe it was a neighbor shouting from outside, or maybe a firefighter, but the tone was wrong. It wasn't calling for help. It was answering, like the fire was a question, and they were saying yes. The loops kept coming. I stopped checking the clock, though it didn't matter. 3:07 a.m. Always. Jen had gone pale. She wasn't taking her own calls anymore, just staring at her screen, headset off, like she was scared to even touch it. I didn't ask what she'd heard. I didn't want to know, because deep down, I had a feeling we were all hearing different things now. Different endings. On the 9th or 10th replay, I'd lost count. The man's voice changed again. He wasn't screaming anymore. He was laughing. It was horrible. Not loud. Not manic. Just this slow, wet chuckle between ragged breaths. Like something had finally snapped inside him. And then, in a hoarse whisper, he said something he'd never said before. I see you. The fire roared in the background. The chanting grew louder. And then the line cut. I didn't take another call that night, or whatever counted as night anymore. The others stopped, too. We sat there in that frozen time, the air thick and dry, the silence broken only by the occasional phantom ring that none of us answered. But I could still hear him, not in the headset, in my head, repeating those words, over and over. I see you. And the worst part was, I knew he wasn't talking to me then. He was talking to me now,